Welcome back to Bourbon and BS Podcast. This is episode 104. That's right. 2-year anniversary.
Woo!
It's pretty big.
That's pretty big. 2 years, man.
It's a big benchmark there. So thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to start sharing this. I have some special guests, Spencer Lappin, who has been on at least once or twice. You recognize this handsome devil here.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be back, man.
And then Amy Schirtzinger, the owner of McClellan's Pub.
Hi.
And we have some treats for us tonight. Not only do we have a very unique bottle, Weller Full Proof. It's a barrel pick that Amy was a part of and can be featured and found at her bar here in Columbus, Ohio. She's going to walk us through a little bit of that. And then I also have a new cigar, actually. This is brand new. I didn't tell you guys this. This is just landed. This is the Romeo y Julieta, Connecticut, Nicaragua. And I'm going to go into that a little bit in part one. And then the topic tonight is It's Anybody's Game. And we'll get into that a little bit further, especially in part two. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. Spencer, how was your week? Go ahead and give us a little bit of a recap since the last time we saw you.
Last time you saw me, let's see, I was in Las Vegas last week, and I'm back in sunny, beautiful Ohio this week.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. And I'm actually really glad this is a very pleasant surprise that we have Amy here, because Amy is actually the owner of my neighborhood pub. So that was a very nice surprise that you had for me, Steve. So I greatly appreciate it.
I thought you'd like that. And Amy, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and about McClellan's Pub. We'll probably repeat ourselves a little bit, but for the Facebook audience here.
So I own McClellan's Pub. I have a partner that helps me through this as well. We're a small neighborhood pub. We are an American pub with Irish inspiration. So we feature a ton of whiskey and scotch. We have almost 500 whiskeys and scotch.
500.
500?
Almost, yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of our thing there. We have 80 different craft beers. We have a scratch kitchen. Most everything in there is made from scratch. And
they also are a Liverpool pub.
we also are a Liverpool pub.
I thought you might bring that up.
So for all of the Liverpool matches, McCellan's Pub is the place to be.
Yes. Yeah, we're the home of Liverpool for all of Columbus. So we show every single one of them. 7 o'clock in the morning, we're open.
That sounds amazing that you have to be there at what time?
Early.
Early.
Very early.
Early.
The Rumplements flows at 5:30 a.m.
Kick it off.
Car bombs, yeah.
Car bombs.
They're awesome. They're great. They're so much fun.
Car bombs or?
Oh, well, yes.
Yes.
All of it.
All right. Give me one more second here while I'm sharing this because it takes a little bit.
Okay.
And then he'll say we'll get started, and then they'll do it on iTunes and everything like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So just kind of just a welcome.
Talk amongst yourselves. I don't have Nate here this week. Nate is occupied, so is Dustin, so I don't have them to talk about our sponsors while I do this. So it's a little awkward, but we'll get through it here and almost done.
Garage is starting to pack up pretty good. I mean, they're flowing in pretty good here, Crane.
Yeah. Now we're standing room only, which is nice. Not for them.
There's one chair that's available.
If you're in the area.
Filled with Crocs, I believe.
Those are my river shoes, my river Crocs.
For the Olentangy?
Whichever river, really. I mean, whatever river you come across, it's not a bad thing to have some Crocs there.
This is delightful.
The Crocs?
No.
Oh.
The cigar. The cigar is delightful.
Fair. All right. Is there a silence on this thing? No? Okay, cool. First iPad.
Is that the
I think Apple's going to make it. I think.
If I was to put money on a stock.
You could, actually.
Early on.
Early on if you Apple. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Let me start this recording. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS Podcast, episode 104. This is our 2-year anniversary. I am honored to have everyone listen in and have Spencer Lappin back in the garage and also Amy Schirtzinger. She is our guest of honor tonight, not only because she brought a very rare bottle of whiskey for us, but because I'm interested to have a conversation with her about It's Anybody's Game. That's going to be in the part 2, Beyond the BS. But tonight we're going to be drinking Weller Full Proof. It is McClellan's Pub Barrel Pick. And we have one of the barrel pickers here with us, and Amy, and so she is very, very generous in sharing this with us. And then we also have a brand new cigar, the Romeo y Julieta Connecticut Nicaragua. And this is a brand new addition to the Romeo y Julieta line. So I'm excited to have you guys try this, more on the mild to medium side, but we'll get into that here shortly. And I want to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, the Patreon page, patreon.com. Bourbon and BS podcast. You guys are definitely helping us out and making this a self-sustaining podcast. So we appreciate that. Check that out. I have come a little bit of a ways as far as some of that merchandise. So I've been working with my designer.
Thank you.
That's not you. You are more of a sounding board, which I appreciate as well.
I'll take it.
But yeah, stay tuned to that. We do have some things that we're going to be talking about. I know it's been kind of delayed. We got through the first month of the year, and I've been working on the Smoking 10 event, so that's going to be a big event here in Columbus, Ohio. Tickets are on sale now, so check that out as well. I'll post a link to that on the Bourbon and BS stuff.
What's the date on that?
So it's March 15th. It's Sunday, and that's going to be Patty's Day weekend. It's at our shop, actually behind our shop in a massive tent. This is our 8th year doing it. We've got guests like Rocky Patel, Christian Aroa, Eric Espinosa, Ricky Rodriguez, Hirochi Robina, Rafael Nodal from Aging Room and all to this. He's actually one of the guys that worked on this cigar with the Grupos de Maestros. And I feel like I'm forgetting someone. Alec Rubin, who's been on the podcast before with Alec Bradley, so he's going to be there as well. So that's going to be exciting. VIP tickets, we have, I think, 9 left out of 100, and then the general admission are still available as well. So check that out. I want to thank Altadis USA. They are our sponsor for the second weekly cigar, which is actually, this is one of theirs as well, but we also have the Monte Cristo Espada, which is through Altadis USA. They're great in a lot of their lines, you know, some of the big brands. We had Josh Bentley on recently with one of the new Upman Herman's batch, and that was a couple weeks ago, and that was one that we also got in the shop same day as this Romeo. So that was a fantastic cigar to check out as well. Tinderbox at Easton, they're the ones providing the Romeo Connecticut Nicaragua tonight. So thank you, Tinderbox, Brian, all the guys at the shop here in Columbus, Ohio. Check them out. We'll have this cigar brand new, 15% off. That's 15%, 15% off, so it doesn't sound like 50. 15.
Has that been an issue for you?
No, but I try to make it as clear as possible. Yeah, I'd like to get that half off cigar. No. That actually, we lose money on that. So that's going to be something that if you guys are interested in trying this, if you guys are in the Columbus area, make sure that you do swing by, check it out. If you're going to be wanting them mailed to you, contact us through the podcast page, Tinderbox at Easton. It's eastontinderbox@gmail.com. We can get that out to you with a 5 cigar minimum, 15% off plus shipping. So that's going to be a great deal. And then BS Cigar Company. We've got some exciting stuff coming out, and we will definitely feature that when they do get back in stock. We have the silver in stock currently. So if you're interested in that, also check us out and contact us. We can get you some BS cigars. Spencer?
Yes, sir.
Have you've had this? The Weller Foolproof?
I have had this. I have not had Amy's barrel pick. So a couple weeks ago, I think I was maybe stalking the McClellan's Facebook page, and I saw
as
Amy
you do.
sitting on top of a barrel of
Tuesday, yeah.
what's in front of us.
Yeah.
So this is a very pleasant surprise. You know, we were talking, on previous podcasts about the Weller 107 and how that's just jumped up in popularity.
Yeah.
And, you know, what we have in front of us has kind of been like almost like the white whale, where people have been asking for it. They said it's out, but it's not in Ohio until
you do a barrel pick.
Until you do a barrel pick.
You just got to buy, 180 bottles at a time, and you're all set. Work with the state. 15%
off.
That's 15.
Whoa.
15.
No. She's like, wait, I didn't get that deal.
Listen, Brent, I did not say that.
Amy, how has this been going for you so far?
It's been going really well.
Yeah.
People are super excited about anything Weller.
Anything Buffalo Trace, really,
anything
right?
Buffalo Trace. When Weller hit, that was huge. When 107 hit, it was huge. They did the white label that fans could actually make their own. That was scarce, to say the least.
Fans can make their own Weller.
They did about 7 or so years ago. They kind of put in what they wanted to taste in a Weller, and they came out with a CYPD, and that hit quick. But this is the latest one. This is a foolproof, so this is straight from the barrel. This is not watered down. It's a little bit oily. It's literally as it was in the barrel. It's non-chill filtered, so it has a little bit different texture than the regular Weller would have. but it comes in about 114 proof.
Okay. So walk us through this a little bit, and like when you want to do a barrel pick, you have to be a bar that's in Ohio.
A bar or affiliated with a bar.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have to work through a bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you had a Buffalo Trace.
We did a Buffalo Trace pick. That went over really well, but at the time Buffalo Trace was a little scarce, so that flew.
Still is in some places.
It still is, yeah. But with the foolproof, you can't get it in Ohio. It's not allocated for Ohio yet, so.
So you cannot buy a bottle of this in Ohio.
Right. You can't buy it through any of the pubs that are doing picks. You can't buy a bottle at the store because it won't be there.
It won't land. So you got the green, the special reserve, yeah,
right.
the 107.
It might land eventually, but it's not landing yet. So anybody that has a barrel pick, the fun thing about these, if a bar or an establishment does a pick, they're all going to be different. So
it's a single barrel, right? I mean, that's essentially where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went down there. I mean, how does this work? So walk us through it, because we've had people that have been a part of barrel picks on here before, but nothing like to this extent where it's just exclusive. We had Austin on before. He works for the Goat. He did a Jefferson's. He was a part of a Jefferson's reserve pick, and that was from several years back. But I mean, this is something so recent. You went down when to get this?
We went down in September.
Okay. I'm gonna have a sip of this. I haven't had it yet.
They pretty much line up several barrels. You taste it straight out of the barrel.
They put it in a glass, or
I mean, whatever.
All right.
Yeah, they don't tip the barrel. You cup your hands.
You taste it. You taste it straight out of the barrel.
Yeah.
And at that point, they offered us a foolproof because we were going to go down and do a 107. And so we took it, of course, because that wasn't a thing when we picked it. We actually probably would have settled on a different barrel had it been the 107 rather than the foolproof.
So how many barrels do you actually get to try?
We tasted 4. Very quickly, we eliminated 2 of them, and it was down to 2. With the full, we settled on this as the third barrel, number 3, which was what everybody immediately decided was the preferred barrel.
So what do they do with the barrels that you said you were not a fan of?
They put them back in the rick house.
And someone else tries them,
Someone
and
else
that
tries
could
them,
be
or
their favorite.
they turn it into 107 or something.
Okay.
So how many barrels did you pick from?
4.
You picked from 4.
Picked from 4.
Okay.
And what did you like specifically about this one?
We liked that it's a wheated bourbon, so being at 114, you want a little bit of sweetness to it too, to kind of offset the spice of the 114. So what was so crazy about this one is the one that was right next to it in the rick house. They show you where in the rick house it is. We actually didn't like, and it's so crazy how different they can be just off the wood and different parts of the rick house.
Were you at different levels, or you different barrels like right next to each other?
Well, one was right next to this one that we didn't end up picking. But there's some at the top that are different. There's some a little towards the center. They're kind of all over the place, but they're all in the same age, the same type of barrel. It's how different they are. It's crazy.
Do you know what floor this was? Because I mean, I know that does have something to do with the
I think this was on the 3rd floor.
3rd floor. Okay.
It tastes like a 3rd floor to me.
Is that right?
I didn't want to say anything.
Not second so much, not 4th.
Yeah. I mean, we're not all experts, but it tastes like a 3rd floor to me.
3rd out of how many?
How many floors were there?
I don't know.
I love it. I think typically it's like 6 or something like that. But all right. So why did you like this barrel? Is what my question is, because when you're doing 4, and was that the limit? You could only do 4 barrels.
That's normally what they pull. I mean, you could probably do more, but you don't want the guy rolling out Tony. But you feel bad. It's a lot of barrels.
But you're making a commitment. I mean, you bought 180 bottles of this, right? So you better like it.
I would have bought 180 more.
All right.
No. So what was it about this one? That's what I want to know.
So we wanted a nice balance. We knew that we are not going to mix this one. This isn't going in a cocktail. This is going to be it's going to be neat. People are going to drink this neat. So it was really important that it had enough character to it, that it had the proper characteristics for a foolproof, which usually is a little bit of spice. It lingers a little bit. It has to have a nice balance to it. And this one, to us, seemed to fit all of those things.
And you obviously can't sell these bottles, correct?
We cannot, no.
Okay. So what does a shot of this, if someone was to drink it neat, cost at McClellan's?
Right now, it's $14.
That is incredibly reasonable for what you have in front of you.
Yeah. So what does that compare to, like with a normal like antique? You have Antique 107
We
there.
do, yeah.
So what is that price at your pub?
I think it's $11 right now.
That's a steal.
Well, you can't get it, and I felt like I'd really be an asshole if I just gouged him on price, you know.
You cursed first, I think, by the way.
Oof.
So that's one of the
Worried about that.
We knew that was going to
So
happen.
that's
Yeah,
I think one of the things I really enjoy about her establishment is that she has 500 different
yeah.
scotches and bourbons and whiskeys, and a lot of them might not be out for show. But I think you want people to actually try these
Yeah.
things. You're not just hoarding them and save them for a rainy
No.
day. You want people to enjoy these.
I want to drink them with people that love it just as much as I do. I am a fan, foremost. So I want to drink them with people that appreciate them.
Yeah.
And, if I'm just gouging on price, that's not really what we're about. It's our big thing, and I tell all the bartenders too, like, figure out what they normally drink. I'm going to find something that fits your flavor profile, and it's going to be something you've never had before. So I want to know what you like to taste, and then get you into something that is just totally different that maybe you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah. I'm getting cinnamon off of this.
Okay.
You're like, no, that's wrong. But no, I don't know why, but I'm getting a lot of like that. It's maybe it's part of the heat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm getting cinnamon off of that.
Yeah, it really depends on the person. I mean, everybody's so different.
What were some of the notes that you got when you tried it?
I gotta spit out this Big Red. Hang on. I'm just kidding. Spencer's like, seriously?
104th podcast, kid's still chewing gum the whole
Still
time.
chewing Big Red.
Yeah,
Everything,
spearmint.
I got a lot of warm spice.
This cigar tastes like menthol for some reason.
Yeah. I'm going to pop another Mentos. Go ahead with the question. I'm sorry. That's a great question.
I get a lot of sweetness at the end. Definitely being a weeder, it does have a heavy sweet to it. I feel like it lingers a little bit. I get a little bit of obviously oak, obviously caramel. You'll hopefully get that in every bourbon, but I also get a little bit of like creme brulee. It's sweet, but it has a little bit of that topping to it as well.
Do you know what the mash bill is? Will they tell you?
They do tell you normally. It's the same mash bill as the regular Wellers. It's the same mash bill as the Pappies as well. So that's why this is so popular. A lot of times it kind of goes on to either be Pappy or it's Weller or.
So this could easily, if the what do you call the master distiller, basically? Mm-hmm. I mean, if they wanted to, they could call this Pappy theoretically, right?
If it fits all of it and it's the right age statement. This one's a 7-year. It was barreled December 26th of 2012.
And they don't put any of that on the bottle, though. I mean,
They don't put it on the bottle, but
so
it's on our barrel.
It's on the barrel, and that is in the pub.
That's the one I was sitting on.
That's one you're sitting on.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I mean, if I know a lot of people that listen to this, you have had barrel picks from other bottles, other distilleries, but it does. I mean, it has your logo on it, single barrel select. It has the logo on it. It's the gold sticker on the side there. So that's how you know you have a barrel pick, and that's for every state, correct? Or is that just Ohio? That's every state, right? It's interesting too because I haven't seen this on all of the ones I've seen. Is the handwritten 63 out of 180?
Well, I wanted to really keep a good track on it. I just got
That's your handwriting.
yeah.
That's why I haven't seen it on many before.
But I just got cases sitting in the middle of the pub. I got to keep track of them,
Yeah.
McClellan's is located where?
Yeah, actually give a shout out. So for people that are in the Columbus area, I mean, yeah, definitely give a shout out for where you're at.
We are on Sawmill Road. We're right next to Fresh Time. We're on the corner of Snoffer and Sawmill. So we're right at the edge of Dublin. And
So kind of right by Flanagan's, kind of across the street from it, and you guys do a heck of a St. Patty's Day.
we do, yeah. We have a huge St. Patty's Day party. We kind of celebrate all week. We're terribly Irish proud, so you're gonna see us getting wild on St. Patty's Day. It's our favorite day of the year. It lasts about a week. We do Irish
Favorite
food.
favorite day of the
week. Favorite
Favorite week of the year.
It's a long week.
That day's
It's
a good
really
week.
long week.
It's a good week. I want to say this about your pub, and it's interesting because I think this is something we can talk about a little bit in the second part too when we talk about business and it's anybody's game. Is that Spencer was he and I were hanging out one night, and that was the first time I walked into McClellan's over there, and it's very interesting for people that are into bourbons going into bars. The thing is that some of the more like I don't want to say popular, but some of the ones that are really out there as far as everyone's talking about the bourbon bars, everyone's talking about this, and it's like in a trendy area, if you will, or the newest area in suburbs, downtown, and this is any city, I think. You go in there, and to your point where you're saying, this is $14 a pour, this would be something that in a trendy bar, and I'm doing air quotes for the people on the audio, but you're going to have it where this is a $20, $21 pour.
$30.
$30, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it depends what city you're in, but I mean, it's something that we walked in, it's a very unassuming exterior because of the strip that you're in there. Mm-hmm. And I got to be honest, it's what I like about whiskey bars and stuff that, you never know what you're going to get when you walk in there. But when you follow word of mouth, like Spencer's like, no, it's right near my house. Let's swing by there. This is kind of one of my, end of the night, or if I'm, just staying local, I like to go in this place. And you're walking up to this place, and it's, again, very unassuming. You walk in, and it's just lights out as far as just the decor and everything else. You've got the whiskey, like right above Amy's head, if you guys are watching on the video. That's the McClellan's Pub barrelhead right there that we hung up for the episode. And you've got barrelheads everywhere. You've got a bar that is just almost somehow neatly overflowing with bottles of whiskey.
It's ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, you probably look at it as it's like, oh, this is so disorganized at times. And
I know where everything is.
Well, I'm saying, but like from us walking in, it's just like,
it looks like
there's
madness.
Well, but there's so many bottles.
You got some choices,
but it's still neatly stacked. I mean, there's order to the place, and as you know where everything is. But I like that about pubs that want to do these types of things, that you want to share the whiskey. I mean, that's the hometown pub, or like you said, my neighborhood pub, is that it's definitely should be a destination for people that are in the Columbus area. You're visiting Columbus and you're in that area. It's so cool that if you know where you're going, these are the gems where it's just word of mouth just spreads.
I was a little hesitant, at first when you told me, a couple days ago, last week maybe, that Amy was going to be on, because it's a hidden gem that a lot of people know about.
And you're like, don't share my hometown.
Yeah, I like being able to grab a seat sometimes there, but if you go in there for a Liverpool game, or if you go there, during a soccer match. It's standing room only. If you go there for St. Patty's Day, I mean, the parking lot is filled. I've been to a lot of places in Columbus, and I think it's probably has the best selection of bourbon and scotch in the city. I really don't think anything compares to it, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's interesting because, doing this podcast, being in the bourbon community, I feel like it's still at a point where the real, like, whiskey or bourbon nerds, they know about it.
Yeah.
And the more people I've mentioned it to, they're like, "Oh yeah, I love that place." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me about it like 6 months ago?"
Right.
I go there all the time.
Well, it's my buddy Bobby who was on the podcast. Bob Breyer a couple of weeks ago. I was over at his house over the weekend. And I was like, "Hey, we're having Amy on the podcast, and she's bringing the Weller pick." He's like, "Oh yeah, I was there a couple of days ago. Just tried it. It's phenomenal." I go, "Thanks for the call, dude."
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
we
down the street, man. Could have walked.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We like to be, a place that has some crazy whiskey, but we're also a place where you can just come and have a nightcap. You can come for dinner, bring the family, get some good food, and just kind of
no kids though, right, Amy?
Well, yeah, they can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, kids.
Kids normally
more
like,
kids the better.
Kids don't drink, bro. Kids don't.
You have
drink.
like a ball pit, like Chuck E. Cheese.
It's in the back.
There's
That's the
that
VIP.
corner
That's the
outside
VIP.
with the fence.
Yeah, it's a dumpster / ball pit. They can
We
play in
welcome
there for a little while.
kids till about 6 p.m. and then usually,
it's a pub.
It's a pub.
See, I like that though. I like that a lot. All right, going back to the whiskey though. Spencer, what are you getting out of this? This is your first time having it, correct?
So
you have not been in the pub.
I have
to
not
have it.
had her barrel pick, no. And to be fair, I just had a few sips of the one that I had. The thing that I get the cinnamon part a little bit off of you, Steve, but I don't get a lot of heat on the front end, which I like. And you mentioned that it's a little oily. I definitely get the oiliness to it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like about it is especially on a day like today, it's 35 degrees outside. It's a balmy 54 in the garage.
It's a 50 plus.
50 plus in the garage. But I do
broke
get
the
the warmness in my chest.
Yeah.
But it's delayed. It's not shaking me. It's not doing anything like that. It doesn't feel like 114 to me. It just
That's great.
it
That's
just
good
doesn't.
news.
Yeah.
It
could
should
sneak
linger
up on
a
you.
little bit. Yes.
It'll what?
It sneak up on you.
Well, at 114, I think so, yeah. I like you have the warmness in your heart too, Spencer, which is nice. I think that's kind of like, maybe that's what you're feeling.
Could be.
Could be that and the whiskey getting close together.
I think it's the whiskey.
Yeah, you think it's the whiskey. I don't know. I think it's... Here's what I'll say about this bottle is that...
what would you pay for a bottle of this? What would you pay, not what it
That's
costs?
what I was actually... It's funny, like, we've done this enough together.
Because it's not in stores.
Yeah. pay nothing, clearly, because I can't get it. Fuck. But I would say it's interesting because you said that retail, if it hit the shelves. Well, in Ohio, it's different because
it won't hit the shelves. Right?
I know, but like you had said, I mean, are you allowed to say what it is, like at cost, or no? You're not allowed to say that. I don't want to say that. All right, so at cost, I will say this. I know what the cost is, and at cost, I would say this is definitely a bottle that would be an absolute steal.
Right. I feel like all of the Weller products are an absolute steal.
Special Reserve and I still don't get along. I think it's good, but that is a hangover.
Really?
For what I don't know why.
Well, you're going to have a hell of a time with this one.
No, Antique 107, good. I can drink that all night.
Okay.
I can drink Buffalo Trace. I can drink Eagle Rare.
Special Reserve can go down so easy.
It might be.
Maybe it could sneak up on you just because you had one more than you thought you did.
Well, normally I do drink it at the end of the night, but I'm going to blame it. So with this at that cost, I think it'd be amazing. I think the secondary market, we talk about the secondary market quite a bit, and I think that you were saying secondary, this would go for, not the barrel pick because that's illegal,
right.
but like if someone had a bottle. If
someone had a bottle.
Secondary is illegal in general, but in general.
I've seen them on the secondary going for anywhere between $350 and $500.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay that, but that's just me.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That just shows the craze here for bourbon.
Weller 107 goes for
on the secondary.
Sure.
I don't.
What does it go for in a store, Steve? Because Weller
right
107 is
now
hard to find.
Yeah.
So
it was what, 35 or something like that?
It was 28, I think, in Ohio, and then it creeped up once.
To 47 recently.
Yeah. Well, once it went to 39, and that was like for a month, and then they Ohio raised it. Which we've talked about that one in particular. I think that with Weller 107. At the price, that was the steal. That was the gem on the liquor shelf. If you can find 107 and you pay $30 out the door, it was incredible. And I put that with Eagle Rare also.
Yeah, Amy, you're going to run out of this bottle. You're going to run out of this barrel. There's not a doubt in my mind. I mean, this is phenomenal. I mean, this is what the difference between 107 and Special Reserve is. This is the difference between this step up versus the 107. There's that big of a difference.
Well, people
and
really
to get foolproof and not watered down is crazy.
Right. That's really hot right now. Anything that's foolproof is really flying. Anything by Buffalo Trace that's foolproof. I know that the E.H. Taylor, you can't find that anymore. Everybody just wants a foolproof, and the craze of Weller plus the foolproof, it's moving really quickly. So we're going to try to get it to as many people as possible. We'll hopefully won't run out before everybody gets it. But
how many bottles have you gone through of this so far?
Probably 20.
Jesus.
I did 16 shots a bottle. It's moving pretty. We're not a very large pub, so 16.
Well, what's your pour? Ounce and a half?
Ounce and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Pint glass.
Depends on who's pouring.
You're an Irish pub.
Yeah. You pour a full kid's large.
2 fingers.
Two fingers. Is this your first one doing a barrel pick?
It's my second one. We did a Buffalo Trace the first time.
And so how does this compare as far as experience, as far as product? I mean, are you more in love with this one? Is it getting better as far as your experience doing this, or you like them different?
They're very different. Just in flavor, also in hype. We did get really lucky with the offer. Thank you, Buffalo Trace, for the offer. Foolproof. We got really lucky. My reps are great too. Kristen is my R&DC rep, and she's been super helpful to help guide what's going to be hot, what's available, helping us, pick things that make sense for our pub. She's super knowledgeable, and her company has really, really been great.
That's the rep for.
Yeah, R&DC is the company that does Buffalo Trace, and they've been awesome. And this made sense for us, because anything by Buffalo Trace, some things will be a little bit better than others. Sorry.
You're talking to that microphone like you mean it.
I know. I need a booster. Right, I need a booster seat. I'm sorry.
One of you guys, will you actually pull that? No, you're fine. Pull that cigar box out and then grab it from her and then angle the mic up so everyone can, on Facebook, can see who they're hearing here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't spill everything, Sean. Thank you very much. Yeah, just like that. Yeah, perfect.
Should I grab my own booster seat?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
You still, lower that down a little bit so they can see you. Yeah. No, still talking to the microphone. No, just like that, just like this, right?
Okay,
so angle it up just a little bit. Yeah, talking to the mic. All right, so I would say with this bottle, I would not pay $300 for this bottle, but that's just me. I'm not going to do that.
80 or 100 for it.
80 maybe. Yes, maybe
for full proof.
Full proof. Yeah, so I would say if this bottle, and we're going to talk Ohio here, if this bottle was on the shelf, given you got Special Reserve over there for 25-ish, give or take, still. Now you have Antique 107 going for 49 or whatever it is. So high 40s, around $50.
Get it in a lot of places.
Well, you can't get it, but I'm just saying, just price-wise, I would say if this were to hit, and I'm looking at this, I would say this would probably retail for in the 70s. Just for, if it's on the shelf, 70s, around 80. So to your point, Spencer, yeah, about $80. I would say for a barrel pick, or not barrel pick, for barrel proof, full proof. Yeah, I mean, it's. I would want to do a 107 Special Reserve, full proof, and go up the line and do a tasting. That would be. I don't know if you ever do events at the pub. That would be a cool one to see. You know what I mean? And compare that.
Well, you're going to be able to see it. We have a huge charity event on the...
What?
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
February 29th. Our charity,
February only has 28 days.
Not this
see
year.
What you're doing there.
Yep. Super special day, super
this is
event.
March. You're so smart, buddy.
Our charities Make-A-Wish. So we have a huge tasting event. We have about 20 different flights we choose from. And this will be one of the flights that are offered where we can compare all three of them together.
You have 20 different flights?
Yeah. So a lot of people that come to these events, they're kind of like me. I don't want to have something I've already had. So we offer, you can kind of pick your own flight rather than this is the flight for the evening. I've already had 2 of them. I don't know if I want that again. You can kind of customize it to what you've already had and what you enjoy.
I know Steve's going to want to get into the cigar here for a sec, but a question for
eventually, yeah.
For you is when you're serving, someone's going to have a few bourbons. Do you suggest going high to low in proof, low to high? What's kind of your
usually low to
rule?
High?
Low to high,
because sometimes some of them will almost burn out a little bit, and then you miss some of the notes from a sweeter, softer bourbon that are great that you're not going to be able to pick up on.
So the higher one could kind of kill your palate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also encourage people to, depends on kind of what they eat. We try to pair our food with this. I actually don't eat spicy food just so
Ever?
No. I don't love it to begin with, but I also can't taste anything. A lot of people that have spicy food in their diet, they taste things very differently. Their palate's a little more muted. Smokers,
all right, easy. All right.
I'm sorry.
I resemble these remarks here.
But all of these things play into that. Women actually have a better palate than men do. They can taste different things, and so...
Knew she was going to bring up the woman.
They can't hear you. What are you saying under your breath? Can you speak into the microphone when you speak under your breath there?
So I got a quick, funny anecdote. So
we'll be the judge
they were
of
talking
that.
about Iowa, and in Iowa, all the presidential candidates are going around there, and they're all having these dinners at people's homes and things like that, and they do these different casseroles. And at one of the houses, they're like, we do one casserole with pepper jack cheese, and we do one with Monterey Jack, because pepper jack could be a little too spicy for some people.
A
Yeah.
little hot.
It could be a little hot in Iowa,
It's a capital P in that pepper.
Yeah, a little too much pepper jack.
Ooh.
Well, when you're tasting whiskey, don't have the pepper jack. Have the mild.
Good to know. No jalapeno poppers.
So, but it's interesting that you do that, because cigars are the same way, and it's a lot of people start mild in the morning, and then they go to fuller body as they go on, and it's. What I like about this is that I don't think enough people talk about on the whiskey side of it is that if you start with...
If you start in the morning?
Well...
That's a different podcast.
Weekend.
Liverpool games can start at 7 a.m.
What time do you open? 7:30. No, but I think it's something that people don't talk about enough is that, they start with a lower proof and they go up, right? But no one talks about the fact that when you start low and you're going higher, you're still muting your palate.
Yes.
When you get to that high one. So that's where I like the fact that you can go in and like we're doing tonight. Like I had a little bit of Buffalo Trace before that, but other than that, it's something that it's nice to try something at this proof fresh.
Yes. Because
you really get the grasp of wow, that's strong. Because if you do it the other way, like when you're doing like you do a Special Reserve, you do a 107, then you do this, you may be like, oh, it's really not that strong. But if you did this first, it might blow the back of your throat out. We
always tell our servers and our bartenders to have them, when they're experiencing a new whiskey, to taste it 3 times. We explain that the first one is like a shock to the palate.
Yeah.
It's your first one of the day usually when you come in. It's just going to kind of come in and kill your mouth. And the second one, take a sip of water. Your second one is going to kind of prep your palate. And by the third one, that's actually the true taste of the whiskey, because you've prepped your palate up.
That's I'm coughing.
Right. By the third one, you can actually taste what the whiskey tastes like. You're not in shock. You're not.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on adding like an ice cube or adding like a drop of water and things like that to it?
I do not add ice. It mutes the flavor. That's why people chill shots. They chill shots to take them down easier. So anytime you add ice, it kills a lot of that flavor. We always serve ours with the ice on the side. If you say you want on the rocks, you can ruin your own whiskey, but I'm not going to ruin it for you. We put it on the side.
I noticed that when we were in, yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
I just won't
wrong
do it.
way to drink it except if you do it the way she just said.
Yeah. If you do it against Amy's written rules,
Right.
Unwritten, but they're written.
They're written.
There's
Yeah.
no right or wrong, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You miss out on a lot of it. So if you want to add ice later to chill it out a little, that's fine. But I feel like everybody should taste what it originally tastes like what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
So when I drink whiskey, if I don't like what it's meant to be, I drink something else. Occasionally, I'll put a drop of water in it, something that's 114. You can put a couple drops in, kind of chill it out a little bit. You can pick up some more flavors there.
Yeah. Sean, do you have a question? You want to? Yeah, the microphone. Let me do that. I'm also doing the producing tonight, so I'm not very good at this.
I think you're doing great.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Question.
Sweet of you to say.
I saw a show on Hulu. I think I mentioned it last week. Neat.
Yeah.
And they were at I think Buffalo Trace, and they were doing a taste test, and I think they were talking about they would drink a sip of the whiskey, and then they would drink a kind of water. I don't know if they put limestone or something in it, they almost clean the palate or something. Have you ever heard like that? There's something some kind of water that they have that you're drinking between the sips to
Limestone water is what they have down there.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
And
Well, they have that. That's what's in most of this, right? They use that limestone to like that.
Right, but they
That's
do
what
that
makes
to
it
kind of
unique.
Cleanse the palate a little
yeah.
A lot of water, especially in the city, has so much chlorine in it that
Right.
we're not that fancy. We just take a sip of water, but
Yeah.
I think limestone would probably be the proper way if that's what they're using to
That'd
make
be
this.
Do you think
Interesting.
water is the best palate cleanser? Or?
Miller Lite works pretty well, Steve. If you
That's usually what I use.
So water.
Yeah. Well,
Ooh.
getting feisty on the pod.
you're getting personal now, all right? That might be
So
The
nice
drink
to
of
have you
choice.
on the pod.
all right. Well, tune in next week when we don't have Amy in the garage. But thank you for
All
this
right,
bottle.
Mr. Crane, why don't you tell me a little bit about this cigar, sir?
Yeah. Let me do the producing thing again. So this is interesting. The Romeo y Julieta, this has a very traditional band as far as the primary band on it, right? So the Romeo y Julieta in the 1875. Now, it's a unique color. They just released a Nicaragua before, but this is the Nicaragua, or Connecticut Nicaragua. What I like about this, you see Connecticut, and with when it comes to the Connecticut term, it's more of something that was originally grown in Connecticut, shade grown, right? So this is something we've talked about on the podcast before. And when you do the shade grown, Amy, I don't know if you know this or not, but they put posts in the fields, and then they drape it with cheesecloth. So that's where the term shade grown. That's what gives it this lighter color, because you're basically just like your skin, right? So if you have shade over you, if you have an umbrella, right, that blocks all the sun, you're not going to get any sun. Now, if you have something that has a little bit of transparency, but it still has some shade to it, you'll get a little less, right? But you're still going to get some sun. You're still going to get some vitamin D, all that stuff. So this is something this is truly a Nicaraguan Puro. It's 100% Nicaraguan tobacco. Plasencia tobacco, we've talked about them before on the podcast. This is something, so Rafael Nadal, not the tennis player, everyone says that, not the tennis player, but the guy that's behind it. You're a big tennis guy. That's it. He worked with the Grupo de Maestros of the Tabacalera de Garcia.
Sorry.
No, go. You go. Yeah, you can.
trying
It's
to
always good to
pick
see a
up the-
fan, tuning in,
Trying to
whether they're at the
read
table or
stuff.
not.
Hi, Mom.
So this is something that the Tabacaleros de Garcia down in Dominican Republic, they did this, but they worked with them. But Plasencia actually made this cigar, and so what they did was, and they messed around with this for about 4 years, where no one has produced a cigar that has a wrapper leaf that is Connecticut seed grown in Nicaragua with the shade grown.
Is the Connecticut leaf only used as a wrapper, or
It's Connecticut seed, yes.
Connecticut seed? So you never really have Connecticut fill or anything like that, correct? Or do you?
I don't. I think they might use it for other things, but typically you're going to get wrapper leaf out of the Connecticut Valley, That's a great question that I wish, like Josh Bentley, who's from Altadis USA, who was on a couple weeks ago. I think that would be something that he would be able to answer better than I could, because I don't know. All I know about Connecticut tobacco is that you have Connecticut, typically shade grown, and then you have Connecticut broadleaf, which is going to be a hardier leaf.
Does that just mean it's obviously you have the color, but is that just because it holds it together well?
No. I mean, it's just a very flavorful tobacco.
So the outside, you actually will get some flavor.
Absolutely. Yeah, and depending on who you talk to, you're going to hear that it's like 15%. Other people are going to say it's like 60% coming from the wrapper leaf. A lot of times the wrapper leaf is going to be a prettier leaf, obviously, because that's what you see. So there's a little bit of a strategy behind that. But what they did with this is that they used something where no one else has really, like I said, produced anything, which is what I like about it, is that Plasencia tobacco, and working with Altadis, which is known for some of the mainstream brands, not as creative anymore. They're absolutely killing it with the fact that they're doing stuff like this with Plasencia. They're doing things so that Monte Cristo Espada that's on the table, that's the next cigar for the part 2, that's also Plasencia. We're doing the BS Gold now with Plasencia, but that's not with Altadis. But I'm just saying they grow and manufacture some amazing cigars. And so you have a big boy like Altadis, which is like the Miller Lite, you know what I mean? The Anheisers. They have a ton of different lines, but they have some of the best tobacco. They have the biggest reach, right? I mean, they're working with these companies now, like Plasencia, to do something like this. And this is surprisingly on the shelf. It's very unassuming, like we were talking about with
I haven't seen
McClellan.
Romeo and Julieta with yellow. Now that just might be.
But it stands out. But when you look at this, if you don't know the story, you're going to look at this and say, Romeo and Julieta, okay, cool, like Connecticut, Nicaragua. So chances are it's like a Connecticut shade. There's some Nicaraguan tobacco. They're just using the Nicaragua thing because it's a little hot right now. Then you actually read about it, or you hear about it, like on a podcast like this, and this is something that they're doing something very innovative down there. And when you smoke it, and I know you smoke cigars, but not necessarily every day. This is something that gives a different flavor than your typical Connecticut shade, where a lot of times like it'll be either true Connecticut, which costs more, or you have Ecuadorian Connecticut shade because it's cheaper to grow there and they have a good climate and soil for that. This is something that you're going to be bringing in some of that hardier Nicaraguan soil.
I was going to say, when you said it was more of a mild to medium, I get some depth of flavor with this that I wasn't expecting. Just appearances, I guess, can be a little deceiving. When I saw this, I thought it was going to be much more mild, and it still is, but it has some depth of flavor that is surprising for Connecticut.
Yeah, so truth be told, I wanted to feature this because it's one of the new ones. We just did the Herman's batch from Upman. These are the 2 newest releases that we got in at the Tinderbox. This one, though, I was really scared to smoke with your foolproof pick.
Why?
Because I knew this would be bold.
But this is a perfect compliment.
I had no idea.
Yeah, this is great.
That's part of the fun of it, is that this one actually, I think it still stands up.
That's 3 for 104. We have 3 good matches out of 104.
If you tune back to episode 8 and episode 34.
Those were the other 2 matches.
Those were the other 2 that we actually had good pairings.
I think for somebody who doesn't smoke every day, too, that just likes to enjoy it sometimes, this is awesome. I mean, it has great flavor. It's
I know he draws attention. I mean, you want to turn and talk out. Put the pinky down, all right?
It's easy to smoke, but it has plenty of flavor. It sometimes, if you don't smoke often, you feel it in your throat here, and this one it doesn't, and you still get a lot of characteristics without getting any kind of burn. Mm-hmm. It's really nice.
So you 2 come after it 2 different ways. He would maybe suggest the cigar to go with it, or you would maybe suggest the bourbon or the whiskey to go with it. If you were the stronger the whiskey, what type of cigar do you think, just in general, would go more mild in general with the stronger the whiskey, or just kind of depends on how you feel on that day?
I think it's probably how you feel, but for me, I would kind of like to do the opposite. The stronger the whiskey, the more mild the cigar, I feel, because I think at some point, either the whiskey or the cigar will probably burn the other one out, and you lose some of that flavor. So, to complement them, and I don't know as much about cigars, but
well, you do pipe tobacco every now and then, right?
I do. Yes.
So if you're doing the pipe tobacco, which way would you go with it?
I go a little bit opposite. I like smoking a pipe a whole lot because I can pair them very easily. There's so many different flavors that you can kind of, I'm all over the place in the evening sometimes. So even in an evening, if I'm smoking a pipe, I can switch tobacco very easily and pair them up a whole lot easier.
What kind of tobacco do you typically enjoy?
I usually
I'm
like
listening to music. Oh, the head?
Yeah.
I got hot.
Looks good, man.
Yeah, thanks.
got
no
hot.
problem.
It's freezing in here.
No, I'm sweating over here.
Um,
I run a little hot.
I typically like a little bit of a sweeter one.
Mm-hmm.
I like to drink more full-bodied whiskeys, so I tend to go a little bit sweeter on the tobacco.
So it's funny that you were saying that you're running a little hot, Steve, because I am starting to feel in my chest the Weller.
That's
a
your
little bit.
heart.
That's not my cold heart.
Such a warm heart.
I'm serious.
Maybe it's warming up your heart.
It is
You're
warm-
smiling more than usual,
It's
which I
warming
like
me-
about that.
I'm so happy that we have this pick in front of us, and again, I'm not just trying to give Amy a big head, but this is kind of like this is a rarity to have, and we're just very lucky to have this. And is there any place else in Ohio that even has this right now?
There are a couple other places, and there are some places that are waiting on theirs too. I'd love
But you're
to.
one of the first.
We are one of the first. I'd love to try them side by side and to see kind of what they picked and how they compare to mine.
How different were the 3 or the 4 bottles?
Very different.
Just tremendously.
Very, very different. Yeah.
Same mash bill, but it's literally just how they sit
Yep,
in the rick
how they-
house and how
yep.
they age over 7
The
years.
barrel has a huge influence.
Well, and the position does as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of them was actually right next to the one that we picked, and we didn't pick it.
So we had a podcast a while back, and Jake, who used to be a part of the podcast, he's still part of the community, which we appreciate, and we wish him luck out in Indianapolis. But he had, I forget what it was. I don't think you were part of that one, Spencer. But it was like Kentucky Spirit and
I had the Kentucky Spirit.
Russell's Reserve single barrel, and they had both, and they literally, the 2 barrels were sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
And they thought initially that one was going to be one and the other was going to be the other. And then they tasted it, and they tasted that different sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope. And they switched the labels, and they're like, this is more Russell's Reserve flavor.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
The palate they have to even figure out what that needs to be.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, they've got it down to a science down there.
And they designate the marketing for it. They designate the price points,
Right.
and it's a whole thing.
Dean Andrews says, have you all tried the Sinistro Last Cowboy cigars? I have not. So, Dean, if you want to hook us up with those guys, and we can definitely review those. I mean, never had that. I'm trying to look at some of these comments here. Scott McDaniel, when I was at OSU, Saturday programming started at 6 a.m. So you're familiar with that, Amy. Not long after we got back from Kegs and Eggs at Papa Joe's. Then on Sunday, we went to Nancy's Diner for a great hangover breakfast. So you might, I mean, if you're a soccer fan, Scott, and you're in the Columbus area, you know where to go now.
We will be there serving up breakfast.
What kind of breakfast do you guys have?
We have, until noon. Liverpool's been doing so well that they've actually been playing a little bit later.
And a lot of games, too.
Oh, yes. A lot of games.
Matches.
Matches, yes. A lot of matches. Yeah, we'll do a traditional Irish breakfast, in the morning, pair it with a Irish coffee.
Bagel and cream cheese.
No. Bangers, hand-cut hash browns,
Nice.
eggs, however you like it.
Black pudding.
No.
You're not a fan of black pudding, are you?
Well,
I don't like the texture, the idea of it.
a lot
honestly.
of people in America don't love it, so we have to be really careful. We're not really in Ireland. We like to have an Irish flair, but some of the stuff, they're just not fond of.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I saw your menu. You said you're an American.
We're an American pub with Irish inspiration.
Yeah. I think you lean more towards the Irish than you realize.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So I prefer just an Irish coffee for breakfast. That really is all I need.
Is that just whiskey?
Well, she has coffee brewing in the background, so you get the smell and the scent
Right.
of coffee
We do ours traditional style.
on top
which
of the taste of whiskey.
everybody thinks it's like Bailey's and coffee, but it isn't. It's Irish whiskey, coffee. It has brown sugar in it, and then we top it with whipped cream.
Nice. That is good. What do you think of the cigar, Spencer? I mean, you were about to say a question, but
So I'm actually a fan of Romeo and Julieta. So I don't
Yeah.
know if on your end that it's just played out with the Altadis and things like that. But Romeo and Julieta I think is just a consistent quality cigar. It burns well. It has a quality draw. I think you just know what you're going to get when you have a Romeo and Julieta. But I've never had a Romeo and Julieta with the Connecticut. But I truly agree with Amy. I think this cigar would pretty much go well with anything. And I think that the Weller for the most part would go well with more of the mild. I think you guys maybe in years past have done, a heavy cigar with a high proof. I think you guys did Booker's with a stronger cigar or something
We did Booker's. I forget which. I think it was the Kathleen's batch, and we did it with the Oliva V, which is a full body cigar, and that was a miserable podcast.
Yeah,
and
so
it was also about 85 degrees outside.
Yeah, so two
I
bad
wanted to
choices
go-
just back to back.
So somebody that smokes as often as you do, how
Yep.
do you how do you pick them?
What goes well with Chipotle?
Like anyone coming into the shop, right? They say, I'm drinking whiskey tonight. What goes well with that? What goes well with scotch or bourbon? I'm like, anything on this wall. Same thing with Chipotle, honestly. It's just a universal food there.
You don't pick it because your palate's going to be much more intense than mine would be.
It's interesting because for me, I prefer certain ones, and there are some cigars that it just doesn't resonate with my palate as far as enjoying the cigar. It's not necessarily going to be a mild or medium or full body. Doing a barrel proof, with the hotter the whiskey, I agree with you, mild, but I don't want to go too mild because if it just drowns it out, I mean, you're going to be battling. And everyone talks about pairings. We've done this on the podcast several times where people talk about pairings and like perfect pairings. Most of the time that people talk about that, they want it to be brought out, right? So like, oh, this cigar, this food brings out more of this from that and everything else. I like the more subtleties, and I also, my biggest thing as a pairing is that it actually will stand up to the other without conflicting. Mm-hmm. So if I can sip the whiskey and I can smoke the cigar and I can taste them both,
That's a win.
it's a win. But when you drink the whiskey by itself, it will taste different.
Right.
When you smoke the cigar by itself, it will taste different. So you don't necessarily realize, unless you really research or you have it, each of them individually on separate days, like it's like a controlled science experiment, right? You have to try it differently. But when I look at this, is that this cigar is actually very much surprising as far as what I've smoked. This is the second one that I've smoked, and there's a lot more there. Spencer, I'll agree with you. There's a lot more complexity there.
And they don't clash, which I think is key.
That's part of it, right?
They don't clash at all. I mean, they both go well with each other. I'm sure you can get different notes from each other, but in general, one doesn't overpower the other one, which I like.
I think this would go really well with a bunch of scotch too. I mean, even though scotch sometimes has a fuller flavor, I feel like this could hold its own with quite a few different things.
What percentage of your customer base is scotch versus bourbon whiskey? I mean, is it coming around?
It's coming around, definitely. Yeah. I'd say at least 40%.
Because we've had some people on the podcast that just said, I don't like Irish whiskey, or I don't like scotch. And some people have said, hey, I don't like that brand of cigar. But they really haven't, well, what have you had?
Right.
What scotch have you had? And I remember, one of the first times I walked into your place, I was like, I'm not really a scotch person. You're like, well, do you like peaty? Do you like smoky? I was like, well, I tried this one. This one doesn't have any smoke, but it has some peatiness.
Right.
So
if you like whiskey, I can find a scotch that you would love. And I'm sure the same thing with cigars. If I like cigars, you can find something in different variants that would fit my flavor profile too. So
my biggest thing when talking about cigars, and I say the same thing about bourbons and such like that, is that once again, look at Weller, right? So for me, Weller, I don't really. I mean, I'll drink the Special Reserve. I actually enjoy it, but I mean, it just does not. For whatever reason, it doesn't agree with me. I've had a history with that, but it's not anything crazy.
We get it, bro.
I'm saying though that doesn't mean that I'm not going to try another Weller because I understand how all this works, right? Yeah. So, and again, the crazy part is that much like Romeo y Julieta, the brand name Romeo y Julieta, just like Weller. It's like you have Buffalo Trace, you have Eagle Rare, you got Pappy, you have a handful of others. And
all of those from Buffalo Trace actually come from 3 or 4 mash bills.
Right.
And they have one of the largest different groups of whiskey there, of bourbon there.
Right.
And they all come from the same few
So
mash bills.
how do they choose the Special Reserve versus the Antique? Is that literally the same, could be the same barrel, but one is just called something else theoretically?
I think it's barreled a little bit higher. But the mash bill would be the same.
Thank you. But so with the cigars, my advice is, and the same thing goes with whiskey, but with cigars, you come into the store that I manage, people don't necessarily always realize what they like. They know what they don't like, and then they broaden that brushstroke. So when you come in and you say, I don't like Romeo y Julieta, I don't like Monte Cristo. And like, what have you smoked from those? Or I don't like Alec Bradley. I don't like Rocky Patel. I don't like Tatuaje. I'm trying to include as many people as I can here. But it's like, what have you smoked? Well, I smoked, I don't know. It was that one. you're like, okay, well, based on that, that was a primarily like a Dominican blend, milder and everything else. Have you had like a Monte Cristo Espada? When you look at this, you've had Romeo y Julieta, the Reserva Real, the 1875, whatever it is, or your first one was like the Romeo 505, which was a very bold, and it said Nicaragua on there as well. So as you educate yourself, as you try things, my advice is to smoke or drink everything. Try something. Try, and a place like McClellan's for whiskey, that's a great, because you have great price points. So it's not like beer. You can't be like, oh, can I try a little bit? No, it's like you buy a drink of it, and then
No, she will pour you a splash just to give it a...
Well, you're putting her out there.
No,
man.
I will
Putting her on
pour.
blast.
I will pour you one.
Yeah. So what do you do if someone says, I don't like bourbon, I don't like whiskey, I don't like scotch?
Here's a beer.
Let's just
Right.
let's just say it's a girl. Just for example's sake.
Are you segueing?
Ooh.
And it's nothing against women,
Right.
but let's just say they just say, I don't like that, or they take a sniff and like, oh, I don't want that at all. Do you even try to take them down that road, or is
Absolutely.
it
There's
just
so many different things you can do with it. You can turn it into a cocktail. You can find something neat that might be. You start them off if they're like a vodka drinker or like a
Why do you hesitate when you say
who
vodka?
are you
drinker?
looking at out there for the record?
the crowd.
Sean?
I
don't mind
try
a
to,
good
I try
vodka
to
martini.
segue them in, and if it's a flavored whiskey, let's start there. If it's
What's a flavored whiskey?
Bird Dog has a great selection of flavored whiskeys, and they're
What flavors are we talking about here?
my
They're
favorite
bourbon flavored, they're whiskey flavored, they're all over the
my favorite. I love the blackberry, and you can.
Really?
Yeah, I
Who
love
makes that?
Bird Dog. Bird Dog makes a great blackberry
Really?
whiskey, and you can turn it into shots. You can drink it on the rocks. You can put it with lemonade and just drink it all day long. But that's a great segue, and then you start building them from there, and that's kind of what we did when we switched into a whiskey bar.
What's the so that brings up a good point, and I actually mentioned cinnamon, but like the Buffalo Trace product that everyone that's a bourbon drinker that's not in the know, they dog.
Fireball?
That's it.
What's wrong with Fireball?
Well, it's not going to be a sipper.
It's just not even a real whiskey, actually.
I mean,
It's not a real whiskey. Explain that. But Buffalo
it's-
Trace makes it. No. Who makes Fireball?
Fireball? I don't know.
I could have sworn it's a Buffalo Trace product. All right, Sean, use that Google computer over there.
I don't think so. Call me out if I'm wrong here, but
I'm trying to. I'm trying to here, but I might be wrong.
I think the
What's that?
Sazerac makes Fireball.
Yeah.
Do they really? Yeah, Sazerac is a Buffalo Trace product, but they're not going to have it when you go down there. They're not going to. They're not
roll
going
up my
to.
sleeves here.
But they're
Getting hot.
But that's going to be like a fun shot. That's not going to be. It's
Point
more
being,
of a schnapps,
though, is that
it's not
it's-
going to be a sipper.
Yeah. My point is that there's a lot of different things that these guys make.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, and like the flavored ones, a lot of bourbon drinkers will just say no. Same thing with cigars.
Right.
Like so, cigars,
Oh, yeah.
same thing.
out
Like
of principle, not out of tasting, out of pure principle before they even try it.
correct. Same thing with cigars. The infused cigars are going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going down a dark path here, but I remember when I first got into cigars, me and my buddies were smoking acids because we liked the flavor. And
Right.
now if you even mention an acid cigar around a fellow cigar,
No, that's
person-
not true.
I don't know. I think that if if I was to whip out an acid cigar at the tinderbox, I feel like there might be some judgment to it.
By certain people, yeah. I mean, that's going to be anything you drink.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's the same thing that we talked about with like Jim Beam, and it's like one of those when we drank Booker's on the podcast, and everyone's like, "Well, I like Booker's, but fuck Jim Beam." And you're like, you
It's
should
a lot
probably
of
look
personal-
into this.
A lot of personal preference.
I'm just saying, like they make these products.
Yeah.
It's just people again they dog on people that are or companies that are super successul.
I do it. I'm guilty.
So Bud
It's
Light,
easy.
and I'm sure they're going to have a bunch of commercials for this. They have Bud Light Seltzer coming out.
Yeah.
And their ad for it was, if you like Bud Light, you'll love Bud Light Seltzer. And if you don't like Bud Light, you'll love Bud Light Seltzer. It's like that's good marketing. They're really including everybody in it.
It's like they paid a lot of money for this.
There's going to be some horses in this commercial
I
for
hope
sure.
so.
It's going to be a whole thing. Yeah.
I hope so.
I'm excited for the commercials of the Super Bowl.
I am too. I think the Bud Light Seltzer, one of the seltzers, is going to be a Post Malone commercial, by the way. And side note, I got to say this.
How do you know that?
I have some sources, but
Is Post Malone your source?
Facebook, actually. Yeah,
The Facebook.
Yeah. No, Zuckerberg tweets me. No, there's a great Super Bowl commercial coming out for a Hyundai. It's fully Boston-based. It's got Chris Evans and what's his name? Krasinski. Rachel Drash, and it's about it's got Smart.
So Steve also does an event here at the garage. He does Boston Movie Marathon, Southie Movie Marathon.
Oh, okay.
So it's back to back to back
Is that
to back to back. So there's a screen behind you where it's all Southie movies, and you would think, how could he possibly fill up a day?
Oh, you wouldn't be surprised. We actually have to make some cuts there.
Yeah, so he can fill up a day, a week, a year. You know, it's his favorite week of the month.
Much like Fatty's Day for you.
It's like that. I'm sorry.
It is, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, Craig Jones says Smart Pot commercial is great. I love that. All right, so pairing, we said it's good. I was going to say this about the Romeo y Julieta. This is something that is, I really love what they're doing. I've already kind of mentioned it, but I do like this stuff as well. What I like about the cigar world versus the bourbon world right now is that it's a little bit. I don't want to say there's more history behind it, but there was the boom. They went through booms already, more than the whiskey, the bourbon world.
When was the cigar boom?
So one of them was in the '90s, and that was very, very big, like mid '90s.
Michael Jordan on the cover of
Michael
Cigar
Jordan,
Aficionado.
Sylvester Stallone, like all this stuff. I mean, it was, and when Opus X came out with Fuente, I mean, it was a big cigar boom, and that's when like there was a bunch of like fly by night, like overnight companies coming out, and they were saying they were cigar makers, and they were just working
Did they get
with.
bought by the bigger boys, or did they
Some of
just
them
kinda fade
fizzled
away?
out. Some of them fizzled out. Some of them got bought out. But what I like about the cigar world is that there are some limited ones, but they're very, very blatant about it. And there is a bit of a secondary market, but other than that, I mean, it's like if you can get it, you can get it, and some people gouge you. The bourbon industry is different to a point that, like this foolproof, it's depending on, it's a state by state thing. You know, the cigars are the same way. Ohio is tough to deal with as far as distribution. If you know a manufacturer or a distributor, they're very difficult. Cigars the same way, so it is depending on where you're at. But I do like the cigar world, like the manufacturers. There's still some mystique about it.
Is the cigar world difficult in Ohio, or is it just difficult across the board?
So working with the state of Ohio, and I'm not trying to dog that, but I'm saying the state of Ohio is difficult to work with for distributors, because they basically, what they're doing in Ohio is, if you have a state ID number, right? So when you are distributing, you're cold. I'm
freezing.
Yeah, I'm actually warm. But no, it's they have to the state of Ohio will go to month by month to the retailer, and you have to provide what you purchased to pay tobacco tax, and then the distributor has to do the same thing. They have to fulfill all their paperwork that this is what we sold to all of these retailers based on our connection and our state ID number for tobacco tax. And then at that point, they will, if they ever want to, and I mean, states, I don't want to call them lazy, but it's like they don't really check all the time. But to do that, if they had to, say, just so they're getting their money.
So why is a state like, when we went to Indianapolis, a couple months ago for the grand opening of Burn, where Jake works at, they have cigars and they have a full-blown bar there.
That's a state-by-state thing as well, yeah.
Will Ohio ever be willing to do where you can smoke and drink in the same establishment?
So,
because you think of Ohio would be more or Indiana would be just more conservative in general,
Right.
than Ohio possibly.
So the way that works is, I'll answer that, is that, so the state of Ohio, the way they have it written, when the smoking ban went in, it was done through a smoke-free workplace. So anywhere that wasn't 80% tobacco revenue, they would not be allowed to smoke. So that excluded public, stores, bars, restaurants, all of that stuff. The way that you're allowed to smoke in a cigar shop or a tobacco shop in the state of Ohio is actually a smoke-free workplace exemption. So we have to file that every year in Ohio, and that's the way. It was like a very sweeping, almost, it is a lazy way of doing it. It's just going to cover everything. It's a smoke-free workplace. So if it's a place of business, you can't smoke in it unless you sell at least 80% of your revenue is tobacco products.
I mean,
that excludes everyone.
Can you sell tobacco products out of your bar or no?
No, I don't have any kind of tobacco license.
Yeah, can't do it. Now you can, so there is a way you can't smoke in there, right? But so if McClellan's Pub bought cigars from a cigar shop that already paid the OTP, which is the tobacco tax, so like we work with like Fido next door, another Irish pub. So they sell cigars, but they buy them from us, and we sell them to them for retail or at a discount. But we're paying the tobacco tax. But you can't smoke inside the pub.
So it maybe costs like $12 at Fido and $10 at your place.
They can do whatever they want, you know what I mean? It's just about the relationship, you know. So, but it's about the actual smoking inside thing is what the big law is. Indiana's different. Every state's different. It's a state-by-state thing until the federal government gets involved like they're getting involved with a lot of other things. You want to talk about politics?
Obama?
All right. Good pairing. I'm going to absolutely just axe that right now.
Yeah, I'm going to sip this here.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so I want to thank, for part one, Bourbon and BS podcast. This is the 2-year anniversary, episode 104. This Weller Full Proof was amazing.
Thank you.
That was an excellent
Knocked
pick.
it out of the park.
Absolutely. Yeah, you better line up your next barrel pick if it's not already.
Yeah,
Working
it was
on
great
it.
with like a Coke Zero or something.
Stop. Oh, my gosh. Stop.
It'll chase a margarita any day of the week.
Yeah, people get so mad. Well, if they want, we'll just no.
You'll say no?
Absolutely.
Really?
You got to respect the bourbon. Absolutely
I was going to say
not.
respect the Coke Zero, but fair
No.
enough.
I love the fact that you can go into a bar anymore and then you're like, hey, can I get I want to try your barrel proof, but I'd like it mixed with like Coke. And you're like, yeah, okay.
Would you like a tall glass of get the hell out of here?
Oh my gosh. But no, so thank you very much, Amy. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's an honor.
We got like 2 more hours left, just as a heads up.
No. Calm down. This is the end of part one. This is when we talk about the whiskey and the cigars. Thank you very much, Altadis and Tinderbox at Easton. This Romeo Julieta, I think this consensus, you guys give it a thumbs up.
Thumbs up for sure.
Thumbs up. I mean, could this be an everyday smoker? Or do you think it's got a little bit too much? Do you think it's got a little too much depth to it?
I think it's an everyday smoker because
I
it's
think so,
mild
too.
enough, you know.
As
but-
not an everyday smoker, I could smoke this every day. This is great.
Right.
This was a great pick.
So, yeah, thank you, Tinderbox, for providing that. And Altadis, you could put out another great product. Altadis USA, we've got the Monte Cristo Espada coming up, so thank you for the support. You see their stuff behind us as well. So, you know, Josh, Paul, the guys at Guys and Girls, Maria as well. I mean, this has been fantastic for you guys supporting the podcast from the very infancy, and I'm excited to see where it goes. BS Cigar Company, we talked about this before on multiple podcasts. There's a lot of exciting things coming up, so stay tuned for the BS Cigar Company. I'm very excited about this year because we've got a new reblend of the gold. We might have another project coming up I'm not going to talk about, and then also the silvers. Eric Espinosa is knocking it out of the park with that.
You literally just brought up something that you're not going to talk about.
Get into, yeah.
You leave him hanging. You know.
I'm thinking have a week full of fun at McCellan's and then finish off with the tent event.
So I want to bring this up actually as we exit out of this part, is that part of the Bourbon and BS community page, which is now, it's all over the country, which I love. We're about almost 700 members. It's something that I want to do a meetup, and I want McClellan's to be one of those in
That'd be great.
2020,
Absolutely.
where we can get some local people that are here that are into the cigars, into the whiskey, and we can do some sort of a night where it's either Thursday, Friday, whatever night works for people. But I
see some local people on here commenting.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the support. So Bourbon and BS community page is actually something where we continue the conversation throughout the weeks, and it's been fantastic. So share it, invite some of your friends that are into the cigars, the whiskey, or just even the life topics as well. And then also the Patreon page I mentioned before when we went into this is that with the Patreon page is patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, and that's the way that you can contribute monthly. And I am excited that within probably the next 30 days, I'm going to have the first prototype of a couple of thank you gifts for people that are on the Patreon page. And it'll be interesting. I've actually been working on I'm going to give a little bit of information, a secondary logo that will be, I think will look awesome on some merchandise, like a hoodie that you have on there, Spencer, the BS cigar hoodie. So I'm excited about that. Guys, thank you very much. Tune in. If you're on Facebook Live, we'll take a short break. We're going to stay live. Did you just brush yourself off?
I want to keep the logo clean.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, stay tuned. We're going to do Beyond the BS. So that's part 2 of episode 104. It's going to be It's Anybody's Game. And so I'm happy that Amy is sticking around for that. Thank you very much. If you're on the audio only, make sure that you share it, like it, review it. Same thing with Facebook, Instagram, everything else. And stay tuned for part 2. Guys, cheers. Thank you very much. I'm going to put my producer hat on to make sure that everything's saved and all that good stuff. Amy, come over here. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Talk amongst yourselves.
So the second half will be tomorrow night, Amy. So.
Oh, no, I'm totally fine. Totally. I'm just...
Her marketing guy will flip out.
Oh, my God. He would, yeah.
I was told not to wear sleeves. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Summertime, yeah, no shirts.
It actually feels pretty good in here.
It's not bad.
Aren't you feeling a little...
56, I think.
It's
a balmy 56. My toes
I
are
believe
cold.
it. I'm always cold. I'm always freezing.
Wearing so many layers of Under Armour. You can't see.
I can't see. You look bulkier, though, because of it. You want
Look,
to hit the head?
What do you have all over you? Oh,
You gonna take a break? Are we taking a break here while everyone does this? What do you guys? Todd Boss says best everyday cigar. Was that an open question? Make sure you comment on that. Todd Boss says he's also sitting outside with 2 heaters just to enjoy the podcast. Todd, we appreciate that. Todd is just south of Columbus. He's in the Chillicothe area. So
okay. Yeah, I see some familiar names.
You know some of these people.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, I tagged your pub, so I hope they're tuning in. Mitch Thompson, friend I've known for a long time. Is that Weller Foolproof? Yes. Again, if you guys caught us late in part 1, this is Weller Foolproof, which you can't find in Ohio unless you do a barrel pick, which is exactly what Amy did. So I'm enjoying it.
You can tell.
You can tell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting all warm over there, taking off your hat.
I am, yeah. It's getting warm. It's a little hot in here.
30 degrees in here, so.
It's 56-ish.
There's no way.
That's what it says. So if anyone has, Todd, best everyday cigar. I don't know if you're asking if the Romeo y Julieta best everyday cigar. I think that's different for everyone. So if you guys are on the Facebook Live right now, this is not something that we have on the audio for the iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff. But best everyday cigar for me, and I'm a little bit biased. I mean, but when we get the BS Gold back in, that's something that I had a part of, much like you have a part of this pick. I mean, there's a little bit of identity there, and you pick things for a reason, right? I mean, this could be something that you would. This is a great everyday nightcap if this was readily available.
It's a full-bodied everydayer.
Well, yeah, that's why I say nightcap, because I feel like nightcap you're going to be, something at the end. I like sipping on something at the end of the night. If it's too light, it's not going to be fulfilling at the end of the day.
You drink this all day.
The special reserve, yeah.
Start with breakfast, and then that's how you end your evening.
If you drink all day. Todd says, give me some recommendations on an everyday cigar. This would be something that if you like the mild to medium stuff, I think some of the medium ones that I really like right now would be the Sober Mesa from Steve Saka, Dumbarton. I think that's a great everyday cigar. Again, BS Gold, when we have it back in, I'll let you guys know when that comes in. I think Illegal Tobacco by La Familia Robina is a great everyday cigar that's out there right now. I'm trying to think about price point as well. I mean, if you're smoking some of the lighter stuff, Butera, you've got the Ashtons, anything from them. Not just the main lines, but anything AJ Fernandez is putting out. Definitely would check that out. I think AJ Fernandez is absolutely killing it right now. And I think that he is putting out stuff all over the board for a lot of different companies that people are not even aware that he's working on, which is something that is interesting, that he is so big right now. He's got a hot hand in the cigar industry, and he doesn't even put his name on everything. Like, he's literally like just pumping out that much stuff.
Wow.
So it's cool to see that. Todd, what do you have for the everyday recommendations? I'll share them to the podcast crowd as well. Todd says, I love the Weller 107. There was someone on, I think it was Eric Evans earlier, that said something about he was trying. Oh, yeah, he said, just did a side-by-side of the Special Reserve and the 107. Yes, I totally get the difference in spice and level rising. So, yeah, I mean, that's what you want. I mean, you put out 2 different products. has the same, as far as brand name, even though they're a sub-brand of Buffalo Trace, and you're going to get different flavors, which is what the whole point of it is. If you're just putting...
Well, this is actually a 107 that's just at a full proof.
Yeah.
So this is a 107. It just is non-chill filtered.
No, 7 proof, right? You said 114?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's crazy how different that is, but it's actually the same product.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Welcome back, Spencer.
Thank you.
Do you need to take a break?
Yeah, I'm gonna warm up my feet real fast. I'll be right back.
You could have gone when... Yeah, all right, go
I
ahead.
don't leave you hanging.
I'm fine.
Are we starting back up again?
Well, go ahead.
You're good.
You-
Take your
yeah,
time.
we'll take a break. Everyone, we still got 21 people watching at the moment, but take your time. Go ahead. Go. Don't listen to him.
Not that door. Not that door. So what do you really think of Amy?
Let's get the Facebook feed going. What do we think of Amy? No, I love having her on. I think it's been a great first part of the podcast, and I think it's going to be a good conversation.
I'm looking forward to it. I know she was a little nervous when we first started.
Yeah.
But I think after having a little bit of Weller, I think she'll loosen up, and looking forward to hearing her perspective on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Did you kind of come up with this idea to have a 2-part? Was it just kind of expand the
so
audience?
For those that the 20 plus people currently listening right now, please share it, which I hope you guys share, and I'm going to share it again here before we get started. That's what I should have been doing. So this week we have Amy, which is an absolute treat to have her on. I mean, she is killing it in her industry, and she has her ups and downs and everything else. So we'll see what she wants to share on that. But next week, again, I said Laurel Tilley, who's a brand ambassador for Macanudo, which is a very, very popular and well-known brand. She's going to be in Columbus area.
Is Macanudo the brand, or is that the name of a...
Macanudo is the brand name, much like Weller is part of Buffalo Trace. So Macanudo is part of General Cigars. So much like Ricky Rodriguez, who's been a part of the podcast, he's on at the Smoking Tent event. He's the CAO, brand ambassador, master blender.
Okay.
So Laurel is the brand ambassador for Macanudo. So she goes around the country. I think she also travels internationally, where she will represent Macanudo. So she's the brand specialist. And so I'm excited about that. And then after that, we're going to have our annual Valentine's Day special on the 12th.
Ooh.
And so
You're going to have the lovely...
Tanya's going to be back on.
That wasn't where I was going with this.
Tanya's going to be back on.
Unless things have changed around the Crane household.
Oh, you're talking about Liz?
I was.
Yeah, I think that would be
just a thought.
I think that'd be a podcast that I want to be in the audience for. I don't want to be on that podcast. No, it's going to be something. So we're going to do 3 weeks in a row with a lady's perspective. So what I like about that is that it may not be for everyone's enjoyment. Some people, women, men alike, they're going to be like, well, I mean, I don't. This is not what I'm tuning in for. But I think there's a dynamic there that we're going to have 3 weeks in a row. But this 2-week series from the whiskey side and bar side, and then you also have and I'll get into this a little bit, but you have someone coming into a person's business, and then you have Laurel, who is working for a company, and she's walking in the door of other people's business, where you have regulars, you have shop owners, and you have those obstacles. So it's 2 different angles. So I like this a lot as far as this being a 2-part series.
I like it too, man. I think it'll broaden the audience a little bit and things like that.
Bangkok, Thailand. That might be a joke.
What's the capital of Thailand?
Who did?
Chucky. That's Chucky.
That didn't.
I don't know who that is.
That didn't show up on mine. All right, so you guys, Spencer, talk to Amy for a second. I'm going to share the second part here real quick.
How do you feel so far?
Great.
And how are the toes?
Cold.
Cold.
I had to readjust my hand warmers, my toes.
Have you ever been on a podcast before?
No.
Do you listen to podcasts?
No.
So this is...
Is this what you expected?
Yeah. What were you expecting? Had you listened to this before?
Yes.
Okay. Just to kind of gauge it.
You have listened to
I think we
podcasts
mentioned it that it was a thing several months ago.
Yes. You guys are very entertaining.
Good.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That was earlier in the night, too.
And the audience is stellar.
Very handsome
Very.
audience.
I'm not just trying to say this, but normally there's more people in the garage as well.
Well, like I said, we're missing
but Disney on Ice is in town. It's a whole thing. You know, half the audience is probably there right now, but they'll catch it on the iTunes.
Yeah, you can. That's a good point to bring up. You can watch on Facebook the video, or you can watch it on YouTube. We also posted.
So I will definitely ask you these questions again. But how long have you been a member of McClellan's? How long have you owned it?
I've owned it for 6.5 years.
Did you?
All right, hang on. No. Cut that off. Cut that off. We're gonna get into it.
Oh, okay.
You okay, Spencer?
I mean, that's literally the only question I had.
That was my ace.
So the second.
You said talk to Amy.
So not show all the cards.
Well, you did.
So bars, right? Good?
Yeah.
Cool.
I love whiskey.
It's cold outside,
It's
right?
cold. I love whiskey. It's Wednesday.
Oh yeah, exactly. Welcome.
Cigars outside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I sure do.
Welcome back to.
When you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready. Welcome back to Bourbon and BS Podcast, episode 104. This is Beyond the BS. This is part 2. So we have still in the garage, we have Spencer Lappin, who has been a part of the podcast on several weeks, and I appreciate Spencer being a part of this.
Thanks, sir.
And we also have Amy Schirtzinger. So this is where we do a two-parter. So the audio side is going to be this part for part 2. Amy Schirtzinger is the owner of McClellan's Pub, which we have been drinking the Weller Full Proof McClellan's Pub.
That is exclusively at McCellan's.
And also in Steve's Garage currently.
True.
Yeah. I want to thank everyone tuning in the audio side. So this is where we talk about the sponsors. So if you're on the Facebook Live, every Wednesday night around 7:30, 7:45, we do a live broadcast. So if you're watching that, it becomes a little redundant, but we do appreciate the support. So patreon.com/Bourbon and BS Podcast. This is where you can be a part of supporting this. You have hand warmers.
I have more hand warmers.
2 hand warmers. There's a whole box up there, by the way.
That'll be a good segue.
Patreon.com, Bourbon and BS Podcast. This is where you can be a part of sponsoring or supporting this. So we appreciate all the support so far. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it one more time before we do this, but we have thank you gifts going out to the people that have supported us from the early on stages. So if you are listening and you want to get a part of it, don't wait until we have that. We will actually reward and thank all the early adopters as far as the Patreon page. So thank you very much. Also, Altadis USA, we've got the Monte Cristo Espada, which is a great cigar. We're going to be smoking that here in the second part. So thank you very much for the support with the second cigar every week, and also the support of just being behind the podcast. We appreciate everyone really being behind the podcast since the very beginning. So thank you, Paul, Josh, Alex, Maria, all those guys out there. And then also Tinderbox at Easton for the Romeo y Julieta. We did a review on that in the first part. So Romeo y Julieta, Connecticut, Nicaragua. So thank you, Tinderbox at Easton, for that. That's going to be 15% off. That's 15% off this week until the next week's podcast. And that's going to be, if you're local, you can do it, take advantage of that on one cigar. Or if you are going to be out of town and you want us to ship you some, it's going to be 15% off, 5-pack minimum on those cigars, and we'll ship those to you plus shipping charges. So thank you guys very much. And then also Be a Cigar Company. Stay tuned in the upcoming weeks, upcoming months for that. I do want to do a quick plug for Tinderbox at Easton. We have the Smoking 10 event, number 8, coming up March 15th. It's Sunday, and we have a handful of guests coming. We limit it to 300 people. We got Rocky Patel. We have Eric Espinosa, Christian Iroa, Ricky Rodriguez. We have Hirochi Robina. Help me out here.
Nadal.
Rafael Nadal from Aging Room and Altadis. He had his hands on these projects that we were actually smoking tonight.
Are there going to be some BSs at the 10th event, Crane?
That is to be determined. And then we also have Alec Rubin from Alec Bradley. He's going to be there as well. I feel like I'm forgetting someone, and I apologize if I am. But we have other companies going to be there as well. So we're excited to have Crowned Heads there. We're having
you only got 9 tickets left for the VIP.
9 tickets left for the VIP. So definitely check that out. This is our 8th year doing it. It's a great time. Sunday, it's going to be a fun time. We have great food, great cash bar. It's going to be amazing. So
I texted a couple buddies about the 10th event, Crane, and I was like, tickets are going fast. And my buddy called me. I was like, tickets don't go on sale till tomorrow. And so it was like, they can't be going that fast if they're not on sale yet. But I'm glad that you only have 9
I like you
spaces
being
left.
my hype girl. That's amazing. Thank you.
I was definitely called out aggressively saying, tickets are going fast. Huh? I go, yeah, real fast. They go on sale tomorrow.
They're not available yet, but I'm sure they're going real fast. Thanks a lot. So Beyond the BS, this is where we go. And Ryan Jones says, my favorite part of Wednesdays is this show. Ryan, thank you very much. He's out in Illinois. Thank you very much for listening every week and being a part of this. Ryan's actually the guy that this is not we actually he's been listening, but he's the one that Miguel who's going to be at the 10 event. Miguel from Crowned Heads. I met Ryan listening to another podcast. I don't know if you remember this or not, or you heard this story. But part of the thing I like about the community that we have here in the Bourbon and BS community and the page on Facebook is that Ryan's had his ups and downs and all that stuff, and he and I were talking over Facebook Messenger and everything like that, and he had met Miguel. He goes to Cincinnati a lot for his daughter's hospital visits from Illinois. And so this is one of those things where Ryan, who's a supporter of us, and we just happened to cross paths. And so by talking to Miguel, who he'd met at an event in Cincinnati when he was down there, Miguel worked through the podcast, and we actually sent him a gift, and it felt really good as far as seeing where this is going. And
class act, man, really class act by you guys.
I think it's something that you can use a platform like this to actually support people that are a part of it. And I think Amy, you feel the same way when you have regulars that are part of it, and I really appreciate that. So Ryan, thank you for tuning in.
And they have McClellan's a charity event coming up on February 29th.
29th, yeah.
29th. Do you have to buy tickets in advance, or do you just show up?
Just show up. We have our charity is Make-A-Wish. And then
Great charity.
We have about 20 different flights to choose from. We'll have food, and going to try some amazing scotch, amazing bourbon, amazing whiskey.
And beer, if you want beer.
Nah.
No beer.
Let me ask you this, though. If there are, because I know there's some people listening that are more cigar smokers and they don't drink for whatever reason.
Okay.
Would it be something that they could attend, and is there benefit?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have...
they can buy flights for the other people.
Well, there's that.
There's that, yeah.
But we also have really great food, too. So, everybody needs to eat, so...
Yeah, it's a great charity, and it's a great event. So, all right, so this is something that this part of our part one of two-part series, we were talking about this at the break, is... Go ahead.
This is part
one
of the two-part series.
Correct. Yeah. Did I say that incorrectly?
You're good.
So this is part one of a two-part series. We have Amy in the garage, and it's anybody's game. And this is something that, I talked to Spencer before this, and I talked to Amy as well. And Spencer, it's like an elephant in the room that I feel like we weren't really going to address directly, based on the original title of this for everyone out there is that, woman in a man's world. And Spencer brought up a good point that can be, if someone's like surfing by and they see that, it could project maybe the wrong image. But I think there's an elephant in the room.
There's some validity to that. I just
you're not wrong, by the way.
I thought the title, after running the title by a few people, I thought it was a little belittling. And I just think that we have to pay a little bit more respect to true experts in the field and true people, and treat people equally. And I think that Amy and the next guest you have next week and other women that you had on the podcast deserve that respect.
Well, and truth be told, I think that's what the discussion's about. Is I think that's exactly right. I think the comments or the feedback that you had might be very much projected in what this is, and I think you call it what you want. But I mean, again, the part that I don't like is that it's a hot button that we still need to talk about it. Like it's one of those things that even when I reached out to Jonathan Herring, who's the general rep who's dealing with Laurel and booked her next week, he was excited about it when I talked about, we're going to call it, it's anybody's game, but then focus a little bit more on the ups and downs and the hurdles of a woman being in a male-dominated industry. And he was like, no, I said, it's probably a played-out thing for her. And he said, no, I think it'll be great because it's not just about cigars.
Right.
It's about all of the intricacies of what happens with this type of thing.
And maybe
it's a male-dominated industry.
Maybe
Bourbon
some of the
is
prejudice that goes into it by Amy owning an Irish pub and she being the expert. I mean, she's walked me through. She is my expert in the city, and for better or worse, there's the prejudice that goes along with that sometimes. And I've tried to never have that, but I'm sure that you deal with some people that may or may not have expressed that to you blindly or maybe behind your back.
Daily.
So daily, hourly. But yeah, this thing it's not necessarily a sensitive topic, but I think it is the elephant in the room. I think you said it correctly, Steve.
So that's the thing. So yeah, elephant in the room. And I spoke with Amy before the podcast, and it's what fascinates me is the dynamic of when a woman walks in a bourbon bar, but a bourbon bar especially, or a bourbon event,
or a cigar shop,
or a cigar shop. When a woman walks into a cigar shop, it gets a bit quiet. Like it throws off the
vibe.
Well,
for sure.
the quote natural environment
Right.
of the good old boys club, right? And then you have someone like Amy, or you have someone in the cigar world
knows her shit,
and now it throws you off again. It's kind of like, well, that's cool, and I'm not sure if I should be like, because these are the things that get introduced to it. I'm just being absolutely candid here. It's like, I don't know if I should be attracted to this person. Like, I mean, are they too knowledgeable? Do they know more than me? And all of a sudden, it becomes this thing that wasn't existing before
Right.
this person walked in.
Sometimes
or in
they'll try to like one up me. Sometimes.
or in your case, they're walking into your establishment a lot
Right.
of times because you're at the bar a lot of you're at the
they
pub a
don't
lot.
necessarily know that you're the owner of the
No.
place either.
No, so they think they know more than you, and so I think that is a dynamic that we don't necessarily address as much, is that it shuts down because a woman walks in the room.
I feel like a lot of times it's really unintentional too. I think that it happens and people don't do it on purpose, but it's just something that's kind of engraved with people that they're not
A natural
disrespectful. Yeah.
prejudice that needs to be overcome quickly.
Can we just put it in my lap here?
No, just talking. Yeah, get up on that microphone. So this is the time where you got into Amy. When did you get into the whiskey world?
I've been a whiskey fan since before I was allowed to drink.
Before it was cool.
I think whiskey's always been cool.
No, I like that answer.
Okay.
Whiskey's always been cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I started drinking it out of my dad's whiskey cabinet.
Nice.
And that was what was available. That's how you get started.
What were you drinking back then?
Dad loves his Old Crow.
Don't knock Old Crow.
Wow.
Dad loves his Old
No,
Crow.
you feel free to knock Old Crow.
There's some good Old Crow out there.
There isn't.
It's old.
It's
It's old Crow. It's not the new Old Crow.
The vintage Old Crow.
Yeah.
Dad,
No,
Dad
no,
loves
no,
his
no.
Old Crow. So yeah, you start with Old Crow and you just keep going.
It's a good starting point. It can go up from there.
It can't go down.
I had a college roommate, Jeff Dovitz, and he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Dove.
No, just Dovitz, we called him. 5'5", about 260.
All muscle.
At one point it was, and then he went to college. And then it got us softer. But he did the 14-day challenge at CJ's down in Miami, and it was all Old Crow.
What is the 14-day challenge?
You have to drink 3 drinks every night for 14 days straight.
So college.
So college. He chose to do Old Crow. Yeah, even for college, like, you can't believe it. So
I don't remember having whiskey in college, to be fair. I mean, maybe we'd do a shot of Jack or something like
No.
that, but I don't remember doing whiskey in college.
that was my thing in college, where I didn't drink till I was 21. Really, I had communion wine, and that's about it.
Good for you.
Went to church a lot, though, if I recall.
I was there daily taking
I
communion.
got to go to church before the bar, guys.
No, it was one of those things that that's the way it worked. My brother still doesn't drink, and I clearly do. If you've tuned into this,
Enough for the both of you.
yeah, that's right. I did for the whole family. But no, it was something that I never drank. But I also didn't try whiskey. It wasn't a big thing in my family. My dad drank vodka. He was. I learned later when I was telling my mom about the show Mad Men, and I was telling her about the episode where they were drinking martinis at lunch and oysters, and then they went, I don't know if you guys watched Mad Men or not, but. Yeah, she was like, yeah, there were times where I wish you would have stayed in the city when we were living in Chicago, and I was like, that's what they do in the show. It ends poorly in the show, but I'm just saying, like, it's one of those things. He'd have a 3 martini lunch, so he drank vodka. My mom didn't drink much other than wine or whatever, so it was one of those
I'm
things.
not trying to be funny. He would go back to work after having a couple of drinks.
You
So
could though.
this
That
was
the thing.
so they got married in '69. This was something that was the '60s and '70s. I mean, this was something that you did. I mean, it was he and I talked later. As I was in my late 20s and everything, he would talk about the fact that he was in the insurance industry. And they would, that was it. Like everyone else would go home, and you'd have the VPs and everyone else go into someone's office, and that's when they would dip into the wet bar. And he would be honest, like you would see on some of these shows, and some of the things that we do in the garage. I mean, there's the level of creativity before it gets too far. But I mean, that was what they did. I mean, they had meetings with drinks, much like people do that. They take clients out to drinks.
I take all of my meetings with drinks.
Well, you're a bar owner.
Classy. It's so funny because, if I have lunch out and I see someone having a beer at lunch, there's no judgment. It's just more jealousy than anything. Then you can have a beer like on a Tuesday during the day and then go back to what you normally do. And one beer, two beers, really wouldn't affect anybody one way or another. But it's just such a different era, and it's not that long ago.
It's not, and there was the same negative connotations as far as if you drink too much and then you have to explain yourself next day at the office and all that stuff. But I think there's a level of, anyways, my thing was I didn't drink whiskey, and so going back to college is that if I would have discovered good whiskey, everyone was drinking Natty Light and Natty Ice, stuff like that, and I would take a sip of it, try it, and I was like, I don't really drink, but I'll take a sip, and I was like, this is terrible. This is absolutely fucking terrible. And then I'm holding hair and cleaning up puke, and I was like, I don't get it.
Well, you had good hair back in the day, Steve, so you got to do what you got to do.
I was holding other people's hair, but I did have good hair. So I had such good hair back in the day that it ran out.
So, Amy, so you enjoyed... This is why I'm here, once every 10 episodes or so. So, Amy, did you have a passion for whiskey, or you just like, this is kind of what I like?
I think it grew into a passion for sure. It became just something that really agreed with me much better than anything else. I love the flavor of it. It grew into an absolute obsession.
So how old were you when it grew into an obsession? I understand.
My family is watching.
So
when
did you realize
you already said that you were drinking out of your dad's liquor cabinet
out there besides Old Crow? When did you realize that there's levels to Old
when
Crow?
My best friend did not like whiskey.
I'll have his or hers.
Yeah.
Wait, explain that.
So you're young, and you start drinking whiskey out of the cabinet, and then you're still
Are you refilling it with water, or you're just
no?
Does Dad know that you're doing this?
No, Dad. Dad wasn't a big drinker, so Dad didn't really notice. I don't think.
Yeah.
No, they weren't big drinkers, so I don't think they noticed, but I think they probably noticed a little.
They knew.
And then
parents know.
And then when did you decide I want to turn this? I enjoy the taste of this, and this agrees with me a little bit more than other spirits. To this is how I'm going to make a living.
Well, man, like, what'd you do before this?
I
think there's a step before
I worked in the
that.
restaurant industry.
Okay.
I worked at several other pubs. And the love just kind of grew. I was able to experience so many different types of whiskey.
Irish pubs or just pubs in general?
Both.
Okay.
My first Irish pub was the Colada, and I felt
Here in Columbus? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the one at Blair's.
Is Colada still here?
No.
I think all of them closed.
Because I
There's
know
a couple of them.
we had a Colada in Cleveland over in
Yeah.
Legacy Village.
The Columbus ones are gone, but I fell in love with it. I mean, I absolutely just felt home. And that was a huge inspiration for McClellan's.
So
Really?
You've been with McCellan's for close to 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you say, and I understand there's some personal things that we don't need to go into that, but when did you decide I want to make this passion for these spirits into I want to own this place and I want to make this my career, job, passion, the whole thing?
I actually had managed a couple bars, and I was getting to the age where I'm like, I need to find something that might be stable, a little more suitable for, what I was planning on doing. And I wasn't actually getting callbacks. I was going on interviews, and people didn't see, bar management is the same as actual management. I was going for manager jobs, and my
not in the industry, in other
not in
industries.
the industry, yeah.
No, they will look at that. Yeah, absolutely.
And it was kind of frustrating. And my significant other at the time was he knew how much I loved the industry, because I do. I have a huge passion for all of it. And it was actually his idea. He was my partner now.
An idea
His
to
idea-
buy a bar.
Yes,
Was
it
it called the same thing back then?
No, it was called something else.
Same location, though?
Same location.
Okay.
And he was very supportive and just said, if this is something you want to do, I want to support you, and let's go buy a pub. So he's my partner now. Is Newt McClellan. Thank you.
Shout out.
Yeah, he's been super supportive, and he's really grown to love it, I believe, too.
All right, so how many years ago? 6?
6.5, yeah.
6.5 years
almost
ago.
7.
And you were working in bars before that, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What did you know anything about business? as far as that goes? I mean, do you have any classic business schooling?
No.
Okay.
No, I worked for some really great people who taught me a lot. I worked for some really crazy people who told me exactly what not to do.
Yeah.
But Newt too, he owns his own company, and
Okay.
his father is a great businessman, and so I had really good support. So the stuff that he didn't know about, I did, and the stuff I didn't know about, he did.
One of my first jobs when I was in college, I was working at Panera as a cook, baker, I should say.
Ooh.
So that was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I was always looking at the pub across the street. This is over in Cleveland, and it was an Irish pub. I was like, those people seem to be having a lot more fun
Right.
than I am here baking cinnamon rolls and things like that for everybody.
Everyone loves a good cinnamon roll, though. I mean, come on.
My parents were so happy when I came home at like 6 a.m. in the morning, and I got them, fresh Panera and things like that. But to have a passion and in the alcohol industry can be a tricky
Yes.
thing. So how do you turn your passion into a business and a thriving business? Because the business has come a long way since
It
you
has.
all took over.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what were some things you said, all right, I like whiskey, I like bourbon, but I want to turn this into my thing. I want to put my stamp on it. You want to put your partner's stamp on it, but you also want to make money too at the same time.
It really took kind of a while, and we really had to figure out what would work for us, and there were several different stages to get to that point. A lot of trial and error, a lot of just small steps that ended up in the long run being huge steps. So just trying to get better food, trying to educate on ourselves on what the area was eating, drinking. And we're in a great area. Our customers are super. They are, anytime you have a new whiskey or bourbon, they don't care what it is. They just say, what's new? Bring it over here.
That's what I asked for. I say, what do you have
Yep.
that's new? And, all of your bartenders are accommodating. Have you tried this before?
Right.
Yeah.
So my bartenders, my staff, they are fans of whiskey as well.
Okay.
So they really enjoy.
Is that in the interview process? You're like, hey, do you like this stuff?
I
Or-
ask them what they drink for sure.
Yeah.
And
Have you rejected people because they don't have similar palates to yours?
no, I love that they all have different palates than me, because they can find a love for something in maybe a product that I don't, and it's just not my palate. So they're great. This last barrel pick, I took some of the staff down too because I really value their opinion.
That was nice of you to take the staff down. Very nice. I mean, not
They're
everyone does that.
They're my favorite people to go anywhere with.
Well, you surround
so.
yourself with good people, obviously, is what you're
Yeah,
doing.
I have great people. They're knowledgeable. They want to learn. They want to taste the new stuff. They want to share it with other people that come in. They want to also find you these things that, will fit your profile.
Well, take me back here. Sorry, Spencer. I mean, take me back to the point where you were working in the industry. You started drinking Old Crow back in the day, right? I feel like we skipped some steps here.
Like the song.
We should skip some
Right.
steps here.
No, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, we don't need all the
Maybe
highlight
the
reel
most
here.
recent history. How about that?
Well, no, I'm even saying back in the day, going from Old Crow, and I mean, everyone's got their stories about drinking too much of whatever, and you don't drink that anymore. But I'm saying, where you transition. So, again, I think part of this is that it's anybody's game being the subject, right? It's going into that, there's I love the Toby Keith song, Whiskey Girl. And it's something that, again, going back to that, is that it's not as common.
No.
It still isn't. I mean, it's getting more and more common.
Right.
But there's still, I mean, the percentage as far as people that are doing this, it's definitely still male dominated.
Yes.
So you go into this, and it's even the business owners. I mean, it's one of those things that woman-owned businesses is very, very. It's a strong following, and people
Right.
respect that.
Well, especially the restaurant and bar industry. There's only actually 7% of the restaurant and bar industry is owned, or the head chef is actually female.
Yeah.
What do you think is it financially driven? Is it perception? Is it, hey, the restaurant, it's more of a risky proposition to get into that?
All of the above.
Okay.
Women actually, when they go for loans, they are half as likely to get the loan than a male, which is shocking.
Are there any? I mean, and forgive me if I'm ignorant here, but I mean, are there any grants for?
There are.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
figured
why
would
there
be.
are those grants to kind of
Push that.
bump that up a little
Yeah.
bit.
It's a numbers game sometimes when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but it's also really empowering that this is an extra push there to make that work. And I have great support. But it is difficult for sure.
And how did you, determine that, okay, I'm in the bar industry. We also want to serve good food as well. And how did you start to build relationships with your reps and things like that to start to get some things that not most people in Ohio don't have? I mean, your selection, you've built relationships with reps to try to get things that just other places can't get, so you are a go-to destination for those types of things.
That's really tricky sometimes too, because everybody wants the good stuff, if you will.
Same with Steve. I mean, sure, there's some cigars that you want that not everyone has, and things like that too.
There is to a point. Yeah, it's a smaller number than you think, though.
Just more of a commodity in the cigar industry than the bourbon world.
Well, so and I'll let Amy answer. I think with cigar smokers, you do have a very similar thing where what you deal with the restaurant, the bar industry, is that when you have a craze like this, you've answered it. You have a hell of a selection. So someone comes in. I mean, it's the same thing if you're part of like a bourbon group or whatever. It's like, oh no, I have 3 bottles of that. What else do you have? You know what I mean? And that's great. Try something different. Look around the bar. Leave the ego at the door. If you're truly into whiskeys, you're truly into food. Like foodies are the same way. I'm like, oh, I want this. And you go, I've had all this
pork
stuff.
belly, Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, pork. But I mean, with whiskeys, I mean, cigars the same way. Is that the everyday smoker? They're going to find something to drink. They're going to find something to smoke.
Right.
And they may have had it before, but they know they like it, and that's what the experience is about. Coming into a pub like that. And that's what I enjoyed, honestly, is that when we went in there, Spencer, the first time, the only time that I've been there so far, is that there were things that I hadn't tried, but then I also remember having a conversation with you about I had this, and this is what I thought. And so it was kind of like that middle ground, but I think that's more of an attitude. That's not necessarily just going in there and wanting to, play an ego game, show everyone up, I know more than you type thing. But I know that Amy as a bar owner, and like you said, much like the place, I said earlier on part 1 is that it's very unassuming. So you come up, think that you're the bartender,
right?
Which again, you are the bartender. Mm-hmm. You're a woman of many hats. But it's like you come up like, what do you have? And what do you have? And you have to play that game night in, night out. It's and you go through it all. And it's like literally, it's like, well, you can walk around because I don't have time to list off 500 different bottles.
Do you have a book of what you have?
We do, though. We do.
You do have a book?
Do, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So figuring out what you normally drink, I'm not going to bring you that, but I'm going to definitely bring you something that has a similar flavor profile. And, the rest of the bartenders, too, we tell them constantly, taste whatever it is that you want to taste. Keep your palate fresh to try these new things so you can also, help find it.
I got a question here. Kara says, or she asked, Kara asked, what is the biggest issue you face as a female business owner in this industry?
This industry is very tough. I think being taken seriously is difficult.
Seriously, how?
Seriously,
I feel like that's a treetop level thing there.
Does she know what she's talking about?
How do you prove that, though?
It's sometimes difficult because if you come in with the attitude that you already know what you're talking about, you don't want to hear what I have to say. That's difficult. I think, being 4'11" and blonde isn't helping anything either. Sometimes
you can go on all the rides, Amy. You can. That's like there's no issue there.
Right. Right.
Not all the rides, but most of them.
Most of the rides she can go on.
It's really frustrating, and the staff is really aware of it too. That when I have like my bar manager behind the bar, they ask him. I've been talking whiskey with them all night, and then they'll turn to him and ask a question, and that's very frustrating.
And then they'll ask you.
They won't ask me. They'll ask
the bar manager might ask you.
No, my staff is very knowledgeable. They can answer for themselves, but the fact that you would immediately turn to a man first is super frustrating. I get, is the guy that owns the place in, and
who do you get that? Who do you get that question from?
Everybody.
Women or men?
Well, it's shocking, both of them.
Yeah, that's what I think that's a good point, right?
I've had one of the most frustrating days. I had a group that was in the industry. They came in and there was 2 men and a woman. They were repping a product, and I sat and I talked to them for about 15 minutes. And waiting for them to pitch whatever it was they were wanting to pitch. my bar manager comes up and they immediately, well, they talked to me first about, she talked to me about like pregnancy cravings, which I don't know anything about. And then he walks up.
But you're a woman, you should know that, apparently.
I should know that, right?
Mostly picklebacks from my experience.
Everyone loves a good pickleback.
But he walks up and they immediately pull out their business cards and want to start talking business. And
To you?
To him.
Oh.
And that's frustrating, stuff like that. You know, please take me serious. You know, I know something. My staff is very knowledgeable. I'd love for you to talk to them, but don't discard, you know, the women that work there too. You know, I have a great female rep who knows probably more about whiskey and bourbon than anyone I've ever met.
How do you handle that? No, I want to ask this. I want to dive in there.
Usually not well.
So do you get aggressive? Do you shut down? Do you walk away? And you say, let this guy, like you know, whoever they're referring to, you know, as the owner or whatever,
right.
or they think that there's the guy that knows whatever. Do you take it personally?
I do, absolutely.
Okay.
I probably get a little more aggressive than I should because of that.
I like that.
Well,
I do like that. I think it's respectful.
But stand up for yourself.
But it's you know, some of them they didn't really get it until they watched it, you know. And my manager is great too, in the sense that, you know, he can pick up on it now and okay, I'm gonna here's the floor, I'm gonna go do something else, which, you know, he shouldn't have to do.
Does he call it out as it is? I mean, I'm going to say this because it's not just female, and I'm not trying to just, you know, interject my personal experience, but we had this the Smoking Tent event, and so I'm in a manager role. I don't own the business,
right.
and so Brian, who's owned the business for 20 years, part of the reason he hired me is because he doesn't like being the face of the business. He's an operations guy, right? Mm-hmm. And we go through our ups and downs back and forth, you know, like over this last 7 years that I've worked for him. And it's one of those things, people come in and they've seen me before. And this happens even with some of our part-time people, is that they come in and this is who this is what resonates with them. So this is who they appreciate.
And things like that.
Well, and they don't know when the owner, sometimes, you know, male or female, the owner is more behind the scenes, but still on site.
Right.
They'll do this where it's like, they'll refer that no one needs to know I own the business. You're the opposite. There was a Cigar Snob featured one of our Smoking Tent events, and because I was the one doing the publicity, I was the person that was in charge of like being on the mic and doing all this stuff. People that come in every day know that stuff. Mm-hmm. People come in like that. And Cigar Snob, for example, I was emailing back and forth, and then all of a sudden this you remember that, Spencer? So they featured us, which was awesome. They're amazing. Cigar Snob magazine, check them out if you're in the cigar industry. But so in the back, there's an event page, and right above was Brian Joyce, who is the owner
of Tinderbox.
The owner, and he was featured, you know, with his arms around a couple people. And I sent the names, and I also sent the name of the picture I was in, and I put my name and the person I was with, and then they just took a liberty of saying Steve Crane, owner,
right,
and all that stuff. Brian's phone blew up before we even saw the magazine. He's like, people are asking him, like, did you sell the business? Like, what's going on? Like, you stepped down? Like, what's going on? And all this stuff. And I felt terrible. And Brian's just like, yeah, no,
right.
Everyone can think you're the owner because now
he doesn't have the ego, but some people could definitely have the ego to take it the wrong way.
He'll feel it sometimes, but yeah, absolutely. But
I feel like I'm extra sensitive to it, for sure.
And I think you should be based on this conversation.
And based on your investment in the company
right.
and things like that. I got a two-part question for you.
Yeah.
The first part is, has it gotten any better or worse in the last 6.5 years of you being a female in the industry? The second part of the question is, because the bourbon craze has really hit over the past 3 to 5 years, you know, where it's just gotten out of control, has people think that they're experts because they watch HGTV, they think they're an expert on remodeling
right.
houses. They think that because they're in a bourbon club that they're an expert on.
Is there a bourbon show on HGTV?
I wish there were.
There should be.
Yeah, we should talk to them.
So the two-part question is, one, has it gotten better or worse in the last 6.5 years? And, you know, and the second part is, are people better or worse because they think that they're experts in the field that they're not really an expert
Great question. That's a great question.
It has definitely gotten better. You know, there's so many, just like this podcast, people will address it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do feel like that does need addressed. Sometimes it's, you know, obnoxious that even needs to happen, but
if it's not talked about, it just
right.
kind of lies there.
And again, I think people do it very unintentionally. But it definitely has gotten better. We have a huge female following, much larger than we had initially.
Do you think that's because of you?
No, I think that is just
No.
I think it's just something that it's becoming more common.
What percentage of your bourbon, whiskey, Scotch reps are female?
The reps less than 50 for sure.
Yeah.
The customers are still probably 20% female.
20% female.
But it's even, I notice couples come in and, the guy will get a whiskey, taste this. And she'll taste it. And then she'll start drinking whiskey. And then she'll start drinking better whiskey. So you watch the progression, and it's really great. And it helps, too, if, as a female, I go to the table and start introducing things that might fit their profile, too.
Yeah.
That they can also see
What
that.
about how the average customer treats you as the owner of the pub from 7 years ago? Better, worse, the same?
Better for sure.
Okay, so making
No, wait.
incremental steps.
Are these regulars or these new people coming in?
Both. I think just
Really?
the industry itself is growing to be much more accepting that, women do know something about whiskey. They are knowledgeable, and, this is something that's just more common now than it was.
Well, I think it's something that you play to your strengths, right? So everyone knows. I mean, that's why it is an elephant in the room, right? So, women overall, they were marketed differently.
Very much so.
And people don't tend to talk about that as much,
Right.
is that we're all suckers for marketing.
Right.
And so when you're doing that, I mean, before this bourbon craze, and I'm going to actually poll the two of you guys, what was the biggest liquor craze right before the bourbon craze? What was
Definitely flavored vodka.
Yeah, flavored
Both,
vodka.
yeah, exactly. And who was that marketed to?
Absolutely women.
Yeah.
Or
And
children with some of it. I mean,
Well, all right, all right, FDA.
Some of
calm
these
down,
flavors
FDA.
are
All
crazy.
right,
I
all
remember
right.
my first Jewel vape, and
All right,
Right.
we're not getting into
cotton
that.
candy's not for kids for sure.
Let's not get into that part. What my point is that there is a little bit of a lag time, right?
Right.
So now you have this point where there's marketing again.
Right.
But
Do you think bourbon's catered marketing towards women, or do you think it's still marketed towards men in general?
I think Mila Kunis is a prime
Love it.
example.
There you go.
all right. So there's two sides of that, though.
The sex sells type thing.
Yeah.
Sex sells. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that plays for both sides. I think it was a really smart move to put her on there. She enjoys it. She clearly
Mm-hmm.
likes it. She, is hot. That helps too. So
She's not bad to look at.
All right.
She's no Ashton Kutcher, but she's fine.
But I mean, that was really smart.
It's a
too.
power couple right there.
Yeah, Ashton and Kutcher. the new season of The Ranch just came out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that was smart
Cheers.
to do, to show that everybody can enjoy it, and that it's a little more.
And
Except
No, I
that-
think there's a little bit of a roller coaster. I think people don't necessarily recognize that there are and flavored vodkas have now trailed off, in my opinion. I don't have the
They do,
stats, but
yeah.
I mean, you're a bar owner, so
they've
you don't have to have the
No.
pinnacle of 18 different flavors anymore. You have the hot
you
three,
just get marshmallow and you get blueberry. And
Whipped
you call it
cream.
whipped cream.
the whipped vodka, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one, right? Yeah. So, but I mean, there's always going to be. I'm not. I've heard about it.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
I've been reading, but no, it's. I think with the bourbon side of it is that I think that we talked about Fireball, so they made a play at it.
Yeah.
Sazerac or Buffalo Trace. I mean, they made a play at it. They're like, all right, so the vodka industry is doing this, and so we got
Fireball's
to.
still a very popular
They did it right.
shot. I mean,
Honestly,
I don't know
they
if
did
people
it right.
sip on it on neat or on ice, but it's a very popular shot.
Todd Conley says now it's flavored seltzers. Yeah, I mean, like people are getting, so the beer world is getting in after it, and other industries. But for the bourbon side of it is that, here's my question to you, Amy, is that when you're dealing with being the business owner, the whiskey expert, which being in your pub, the one time I was in there, I had more interaction with you because you knew Spencer and everything. But it's like I was impressed with you, much like I would be impressed with anyone else. And this is why. It's not only because of your knowledge, but it was the demeanor. So that's one of those things that I don't like going to cocktail bars necessarily. I don't like going to cocktail bars that are run by or bartended by pretentious people that if you go in there and you ask for a Miller Lite, they're going to be like, ugh.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have that. They raise the nose goes up and everything else. It's like fucking just crack a Miller Lite, man.
Right.
Like I'm here to have a drink at your establishment.
I'll serve you a Miller Lite. Would you like a whiskey too? I mean,
Yeah. And it's like, you drink whiskey, but you were very, very welcoming, and you were, so as soon as you had that personality match, as far as you know how to talk to people.
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's fact. So it's one of those things that as soon as you actually have that interaction with a woman or a male bartender, bar owner, server, whatever, you can be naturally impressed by someone as long as they're addressing you as a person.
Right.
And it goes both
as
ways.
a professional, when again, I'm going to bring it back to
Go ahead,
when we were in. So when we went to Burton, the Brown Foreman.
Yeah.
So that sales rep was, an attractive, woman. I think she used that to her advantage, but she also knew her stuff, to help us kind of make selections as to, what type of Woodford, master select and things like that. But going back to the expert part of it, more people think that they're experts now just because it's been in the air. People can be more choosy between the Weller or Special Reserve and the Antique and things like that. Are people more willing to learn, or are they less willing to learn here over the past few years, just because now people are more educated, self-educated than they were a few years ago?
I think it really depends on the person. We see both. There's some people that are just really open to whiskey and bourbon and just want to, well, what do you think about it? They want to have a conversation. They want to hear what you taste out of it. And then there's some people that, it's just a personality thing. So we get a lot of both. And we get a lot of both.
There you go.
Both of them are enjoyable.
Go on.
I want everyone else to hear you.
So
Right.
how do you combat the person who's an expert? Because I'm sure Steve deals with the same, that thinks that they're an expert in the cigar field and they want to be
You have it in
know-it-all.
any field. Anything.
Sure. So how do you, maybe not combat it, that's probably not the right word because you don't want to be confrontational, but how do you deal with the expert, and how do you kind of, how do you make them more of an expert without insulting them one way or another?
I turn it over to my bartender.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you don't have the patience for
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
you got a business to run, so
I
you're
do have a
like,
business to
I
run.
don't. Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah. So sometimes, when they want to get really aggressive with,
Or I've had that, I don't like that.
right.
Something like that.
And we just try to find them something else that they would like, something else that does fit, what they're looking for.
What I don't get is, and I got a great question from Terry out there, but what's that? I'm aware. Yeah, it's Sean's wife. But what I don't
It
get,
says Terry Sean's wife on there.
that's her faceback call sign. What I don't get is why people go into bars or any other business, and being a business owner yourself, do you wrap your head around it where people come in and they're the combatant ones? They go in. Is it an ego thing? Is it something where you have it where you go in and it's like, I know more than you? Like, I love the Ron Swanson thing. If you ever watched Parks and Rec, and he walks in like the Home Depot or whatever, and they're like, can I help you out with anything? And they're like, I know more than you.
Right.
Which is great. It's hilarious, right? But if you go...
Does Ron Swanson know more than them, though?
Probably. But if people walk in the cigar shop and they're a genuine person, and I don't mean genuine like they are just genuinely themselves, authentically themselves, but they're just a good person, and they I've had this, I've had that, I smoked this, and then all of a sudden, like for me, they've qualified themselves to me, and it's like, cool, like what do you like smoking? What haven't you had? And like, I don't know, like they don't even ask you questions, or if the person does ask questions or has a conversation with you, that's where everyone wins.
Right.
But when people come in, they're combatant, and they're looking at your whiskey selection, you come, hey, what would you like to have? Well, I'm a whiskey. What bourbons do you have? And you're like, well, I have 300 bourbons. Not only
they
that.
ask the one that they clearly see you don't have.
Which one is that?
Exactly. That's a good answer. But they don't see everything. But that's the same thing. It's like, oh, you guys don't have it. It's like, what are you looking for? And they're like, oh, we get that in the cigar shop too. Right. It's like, oh, I was looking for this. And I was like, oh, it's actually over here. But you just walked in for the first time, and there's a wall of cigars, and there's 450 different cigar bins on that thing. And I know how people work. That unless you are part of like maybe 5% of how people's brains work, you did not walk up and down that wall and take in every bin of that.
Right.
There's just not the possibility. But the the condescending attitude walking in. I think that's not necessarily a sexist thing. I mean, maybe it's more aimed towards that if you walk up as a bartender or a business owner, but I don't think it's necessarily a sexist thing. I think that's something that they just walk in. I don't care if you're a guy or a girl, if you're 4'11", like you, or you're a 6'4", hipster bartender that knows all about whiskeys. They go in like looking for a fight, a battle, a feud.
I think with how rare some of this stuff is, if you've had it, it's almost an ego boost. Oh, I've had this. Oh, I've had that. And that, doesn't really help that sometimes. And it just kind of depends on the person too. Like, they can just go on and on about I've had it. What do you have that I don't have? Or, you can have that conversation about you had it. Oh, what did you think about it?
Yeah.
So trying to get that out of them, like, we're on the same playing field. We all just want to find something we really enjoy. I want to find you something that you haven't had that you really enjoy. Let's just have a conversation about how you feel about these things and how you tasted them, rather than the combativeness.
All right.
I'm really interested, and I know that we have Terry's question.
Yeah.
But besides the less than 50% of women, they're declined for loans. You mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
What are some other just features that us as guys just don't know? What are some of the just real basic challenges besides guys just hitting on you just because you're behind the bar? Things that we don't see that are challenges as a female business owner that us men just don't understand, and probably may not, but at least we understand where you're coming from.
A lot of it, lifestyle. A lot of women are expected to, have kids and do the stuff like that, and it's a different lifestyle. So anytime you add a business on top of it, you're not only having to deal with the family life, but also the business, or vice versa. That's challenging. Even working just in the industry specifically, this happened last weekend. We were very busy. I hopped behind the bar, and a couple of guys that I talked to about whiskey pretty extensively. I'm running. Everybody's running at this point. We're very busy, and
you got stuff to do.
And they just look at me and say, "Smile." And,
oh, fuck off, bro.
I love that.
Oh, I love it too. And,
or the comment like, you'd be a lot prettier if you smiled.
Right.
You ever heard that before?
I get that all the time. Oh, sorry. It was up for you.
Spencer, that's between us.
Right. So, I don't have the kind of face that smiles all the time. I'm busy. I'm not there to be pretty. I'm not there to, just amuse you. Like, I'm there to work. I'm there to explain this stuff. I'm there to make sure that my staff is equipped as best they can be. And I actually said to them, like, this guy over here, and I pointed to one of my bartenders. I'm like, would you have told him that? Because he's not smiling. Why didn't you ask him to smile?
He should smile.
How'd that go?
Well.
No. Yeah. How'd that go?
My staff picks right up on it.
No, when we told that to that customer,
he got very offended. Very offended because all he wanted me to do was smile, and he couldn't understand why I was offended.
Was he drunk?
No.
Just an asshole.
They don't understand that, and I said, why didn't you ask him to smile? Well, he's not as pretty. And I'm like, we're not here to be pretty.
That's probably true.
But we're not here to be pretty.
It's not his
see
type.
what he looks like, to be fair.
Well, to be honest, he is prettier than me. But, it's not something you would ever say to a man. And
it's
that's
not something you ever say to a man.
And it's really frustrating.
That's
and
a
how
different dialect right there.
Yeah, how upset he was that I didn't just smile at him.
So is that on the daily, not that specific comment, but shit like that?
That comment, yes.
Shit like that just happens all the time.
All the time.
So this is what I love about this is that like Spencer was the one that said, like this, like we shouldn't call it like the woman in the man's world, but I feel like you're dialing in. I think I think this is an elephant in the room, like I said. But I mean,
there's just stuff that women, are more than 50% of the workforce. I think it's like 52 or 54% now. And they just deal with shit that we just don't. So it's I think that until we actually have the conversation, until we actually understand it, we just don't get the side comments and stuff like that, certain people deal with on. It's an everyday thing.
Right.
You can either develop a tough skin, which you've seemed to develop a tough skin, or you can say fuck off and have that, right. Or you can go the opposite way and smile and whatever.
So let me ask you this: like, when do you? Here's the other dynamic, right? So, like, a woman comes in the cigar shop and she compliments me, right? You know, like, oh, you know, and I'm not looking for compliments. This is just like we're talking face value. This is typically like, and also literally face value. I have a deep voice, so I get that comment. So when women are shopping for themselves or for men in their lives, it could be their husband. You know, I even have guys that have come in. There's this one guy that comes in, right? And there was this one time he's like, hey, I need to, like, you know, my wife needs to, like, no, like, I'm going to record you saying something. I take it as flattering. I think there is a side of it because it's not as prevalent, right? But when a woman compliments a man, it is, okay, cool, yeah.
Right.
Take it as a compliment. But I get that. I am not saying this is what you're saying, but there is a bit of a chip on the shoulder because of the way that society, especially in America, has evolved. But is there a compromise, right? So if someone says that, you respond back.
Absolutely.
And people listening might not like what I have to say here, but it's like you respond back in a defensive manner. It's like you almost like kind of bark back, and you're like, you know what, like fuck you, man.
Well,
like, you know, I'm a business owner and all that stuff. And
right.
It's like you forget that sometimes that there are customers that come in, and there is a way. Let me ask you: is there a way to not be combative back or reach to their level and say, you know what, hey, I actually have a lot of tables, and just kill them with kindness? Right. Have you done that approach, or is that not your approach?
That is not my approach usually.
And that's fair. No, I figured you'd say that because I think that's something that being in the situation you're in, and again, the topic at hand is that most of the time when it's a woman in a man's world, or, you know, it's anybody's game, is that sometimes you have to play a little more aggressive.
Yes,
because you have to prove
definitely,
yourself.
You know, there are two ways to play it, and sometimes I try to play off of, you know, how the comment is given. You know, do I know this person well? How, you know, who is around them? How are they saying it? And, you know, sometimes I was so disappointed in this very specific instance because I had talked to them so specifically about whiskey that I felt like after they had said that all the things I said was just thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I'm like, at the end of the day, you just want me to smile at you.
What's terrible about it is, in my opinion, as a middle-aged white male, and I deal with this a lot too. This is the other side of it.
You got some Native American in you.
I don't actually at all. 0, I think.
2%.
I think it's 0. But my point is that you come up to, like, when we were in there and all that stuff, is that it's, and I think you are a good person to say, like, I can actually decipher some bullshit. Mm-hmm. But it actually sours everything else. So right. when someone, male or female, but especially male, and you're at that table talking about whiskey, and it's like, you know, how's the night going?
The whole thing sucks because I love to have a good time.
I know.
And I love to joke.
That's my point. Is that, like, if that was the first interaction of the night, you're like, yeah, it's going all right. You know, it's good first thing. But if this guy always said, you know, you should smile more, and then you come into my table, I'm like, hey, how's your night going? He's like, you know what, fuck you, buddy. I'm not single. I'm trying to be with you. I'm just trying to serve you drinks. And I'm like, I literally was just trying to be nice. Like, Jesus Christ, like, what's wrong with this girl? Right.
And that's how it comes off a lot.
It's terrible.
And it's, you know, and then you get a reputation of, you know, not being so friendly. And I'm very friendly. You know, some of the best female owners, managers, chefs, bartenders, all of them, they are the most fun-loving, friendly people. But then they get put in this category that, you know, even if they're good at their job, they, you know, are perceived bitchy.
Do you play to your strengths sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as being a female in this industry, and it's like that whole thing where we were talking about, where you walk in the room and a female walks into that situation and everything stops. I'm not saying like you just go like full out like ditzy and all that stuff, but you go in there and it's like you just start having conversations, and by the time you exit that room, they're like, dude, like she was great.
You really have to try to read your clientele.
Yeah. Because
some of them are really open and some of them aren't.
I want to read this. So Terry Kate says, and this is Sean's wife, geez, this is so common for women, unfortunately. How do you balance the honest reaction of assertiveness/aggression to request respect with the need to provide customer service as a business owner/manager? I don't know FWIW means. I hate the saying, the customer is always right, because sometimes the customer is an asshole. She put stars. She didn't put S's, but I think she meant asshole. She did. How do you deal with the more challenging, condescending customers without jeopardizing the business aspect?
I would
it's a great question.
Personally, I could definitely work on that. definitely work on that.
You don't always deal with the best. Yeah.
No, because I do take offense to it a lot, but trying to flip that around and just trying to show them a different side is usually the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Would you say that you have to be more of an expert than your counterparts?
Yes.
So you have to know more about the product than someone else, just
you have
to
to
be
prove
not to be
yourself
taken
more, right?
serious.
Yeah.
You have to prove yourself more than
because they don't.
How's that Jack Daniels? It tastes like you like whiskey.
Right.
Yeah, it tastes like whiskey.
Yeah, because they won't. They don't assume that even as the owner, they will ask me sometimes, "Oh, do you drink whiskey?" And I just turn around and look at the back bar, and I'm like, "Of course I drink whiskey." And there's that. It's you would never ask any of the other guys that work there if they drank whiskey.
I would though.
Would you?
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those. It's frustrating to me because I do have that. I mean, I think everyone, especially I want to say in America, but it's actually worse in other cultures. But that I don't know, what. So again, I was in Salem, Massachusetts this last weekend. Was it? Like it was just recently, and I saw
that suit looked great.
Thank
by
you.
the way, yeah.
Thank you very much. But it was I got some compliments there too. I didn't like the way it was tailored, but it was all right. Yeah. No, I didn't fish for the compliments. You threw it out there. It's like fishing with dynamite when you're around.
Whatever catches more fish.
Yeah. No, but I was saying I told the story where I saw the Blanton's horse topper at the bar, and I it was a guy bartender at this hotel, right? And it was a haunted hotel, by the way. That's a different story, but I didn't really experience a whole lot of that, but apparently it's a thing. Anyways, I saw that and I said, "Hey, how much is your Blanton's?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not sure. Let me check." And so he went to the register and he's like, "Oh, it's $12." I was like, "Oh, that's a great price." And then I said, "I'll take a Blanton's." And so he went to this small selection of whiskey and he picked up one bottle. That wasn't it. I was like, "What is he doing?" He didn't know what bottle of Blanton's it. He didn't know what it was. And so I was like, "It's the one with the horse on it." And so he picked it up. He's like, "Oh, okay." And he says, "Is this any good?" And I said, "Well, I like it a lot. It's a Buffalo Trace product. It's actually back home in Columbus, Ohio. It's very hard to find. You can find it at bars, but you can't just grab a bottle anytime you walk in a liquor store." And then another guy over here on the other side of the bar, he's like, "Hey, what is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's Blanton's." He's like, "What is that?" I was like, "It's a bourbon." He's like, "Oh, is that any good?" And I was like, "Jesus Christ, like these guys don't know out here in Massachusetts."
Fucking Boston pieces of
easy.
Sorry.
My point is that you have to know where you're at too. It's a demographic thing, you know what I mean? So when bourbon and everything else is huge, and I got to be honest, if
we're also close to Kentucky here too, right?
That's right. But there is something there where
But you should know your product.
Bingo.
No matter what you are. And
that's the great equalizer there. So
right.
If there was a woman bartender behind there and it was like, "Oh, it's her first day, she doesn't know Blanton's," I understand that. If there's a guy bartender and it's like first day, I get it. But there is something in this society that it's a fact of the matter. And I appreciate the fact that, Amy, you realize that is that this is something that if there's a woman behind the bar versus a guy behind the bar, and if they fit the part
right.
of a bartender, and especially in the area we're in right now, if they don't know what a bottle of Blanton's is,
right.
they don't know shit about shit.
Right.
And I don't trust anything you say. Now, this guy made some killer cocktails, and he knew his shit about other things. You know what I mean? Like
How was that Blanton's Manhattan?
I didn't make a Manhattan. But it was one of those things that, he took not a Glencairn, but he took a snifter. And then you got Liz over here next to me. He's like, "Well," she's like, what do you guys do?" Like, as he's grabbing the bottle, like, "What is your pour? Is it an ounce and a half?" I was like, "Scram, like, stop, like, let him pour what he's going to pour."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, I just take the snifter and I just pour it so that it gets to this point in the glass." And I'm like watching him do it, and I'm like, this guy doesn't care.
Worth
about
every bit
his
of
job.
$12, huh?
Oh my God, he did this, and then he's like leaned it a little bit. He's like, I guess there's a little more in there.
Right.
That was easily a double. Easily a double for 12.
Any place you work, you have to be knowledgeable about your product. When we have a lot of comments all the time. People come in, "Wow, you really know your stuff." And at that point, I'm like, well, I should. This is my industry. You sell vacuums. You need to know everything about that vacuum, whatever it is. But when they follow it up with "for a girl," that's the problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. So any industry, you need to know what it is that you're selling, you're representing, And
How do you respond to that for a girl?
it depends. It depends on the customer. Sometimes you can joke with them. Sometimes I get really offended.
Yeah.
But I do explain to them, like, yeah, what do you do? Are you a doctor? Wow. Could you imagine somebody coming in and be like, wow, you really know a lot about the body,
For a guy.
It's crazy. Like
Weird conversation right there.
Especially if they're about to operate on you. Yeah.
Right.
No, so, yeah.
I mean, you were a banker. You know a lot about money and loans and percentages. I mean, it's an odd thing. And I think it's an industry thing as well, that people automatically assume that if you're in the industry, male or female, it's surprising when you know about your product, which is not good.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's definitely more industry heavy, just because a bartender, with their boobs out and things like that's a whole different thing than if you go tilted kilt or something like that, then someone else behind the bar.
But some of those boobs out too. They really know what they're selling.
They know what they're selling.
They know what they're doing.
They do.
Absolutely.
And they know what they're doing.
They know their product as well, and that's important.
The whole thing has kind of changed maybe over the last 30 years, where just everyone is just adjusting for right or wrong as to just more females just in the workforce in general. And it's just a whole new ball game that everyone's at, and how everyone's adjusting to it. But I think, as a female owner, which you said is less than 7% of the industry, that's such a minute part of the game that, you have a thriving bar that's growing and doing things like that. But, would it be easier or harder, if it was the other way around? I don't know the answer, but I'm sure you do.
So I look at it, and I mean, play to your strengths. I say that to a lot of people that I talk to, right? And I'm no expert about a lot of things, and maybe nothing at all. But when you talk about, a bartender that, has, boobs out, tight pants, and like you have it, like you look at that, and it is again, bars still, depending on where you're at, but the majority of bars are still driven by males. So it's like, there's I love the female bartenders that will absolutely make you feel like you're 110%, and they'll just roll with it until you get over the line, and they'll just absolutely put you in check, and they do it in a good way. But they're also the same bartenders that will, they wear, the tight-fitting clothes. They, it's like when they're leaning over, they do all that stuff. It's like, this is the job. Like, this is what you do. Like, there's not. I don't look at it anymore at my age as demeaning. It's like one of those things, and it's if you want to play to your strengths, it's the same thing if there's a guy bartender, and
he's wearing tight pants.
Well, he's wearing. You're absolutely right, though. I mean, you're joking, but it's like he's wearing tight pants. He's wearing a tight polo or whatever the uniform is, and it's like, yeah, girls eat that shit up.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what you work for tips, right? I mean, this is it.
Those people can be fantastic at their job, very knowledgeable, fast, accurate.
Do both.
And do both, absolutely.
Do both.
I know both of those scenarios where they're absolutely fantastic, and they'll play it up.
But as a business owner, it's different. You know what I mean?
But
I like the fact that where you're at in this industry, you know your shit, and you're very passionate. And when you get to the bar that you own, that you're running, like your big priority is clearly, I got to make sure I have the right employees. I need to make sure the lights are on. I mean, make sure all this stuff, like things that people don't think about. Going on special reserve.
I'm gonna get. All right. Put it in there.
There you go. But I'm saying, like, you have this mentality. It's like, I guess it again, I go back to it, is that when do we get to the point as people that are in control of that environment to a point, and you are that person where it's people are coming into your pub, so you can, and I that's a question, and I think Spencer kind of alluded to it earlier, is that when you first opened it, there's more of those people that are coming into the pub that they don't know that you're owner, they're doing all that stuff. You said it's gotten better, but where does it get to the point? Where's the transition? Are you at that point where now people are coming in because they know Amy? Now there's people coming in that you have broken that barrier, and to go to the classic
I think
stereotype.
There'll always be a barrier, and I struggle with it now even. And a good example is that, when I started the business, I used to have super curly black hair, but people found it unapproachable. So to be more approachable, I'm now a blonde. They think it's more friendly. So I think
is that why you did that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and I will do anything for my business, and I feel like men do the same thing. There's an appearance, there's styles of clothing that you do or don't wear. But I'll do anything for my business, and if people think I'm more approachable as a blonde, they think that I'm less mean. So if I am assertive, borderline aggressive, sometimes bitchy, but as a blonde, they'll take it a whole lot better.
I hear you say that quietly, but then you spoke it in the mic and it got louder.
It's true.
Well,
You're like, I want to reiterate, bitchy.
I think where it crosses the line is, the first time that I walked in there, she approached me and, Amy's, a good looking blonde, but as soon as she knew her shit, any preconceived notions of, hey, this is just a girl behind the bar goes out the window. So I think it's similar in most industries that as soon as, Steve, do you have any females that work at the Tinderbox?
So we don't, and
do you have any female cigar reps?
Yeah, we do actually. Kylie, who was a part of this, she won't be on the podcast because they're going through something that she cannot be on the podcast.
But I think the easiest way to approach that is if Kylie, if she didn't know her stuff right away, there's definitely more of a learning curve and less leniency to let her learn it. But if she knows her stuff on day one, like Amy knew her stuff on day one, then any preconceived notions kind of go out the window because that is the expert that you're talking to. Everyone has first impressions and things like that. But if the first impression is, she knows what she's talking about, then that alleviates a lot of things.
So I will say this, though, in the cigar industry. So, like, again, next week we have Laurel on, right? So she's in a different aspect of the industry. It's like a rep for you guys, right? So female reps, if you're selling out an event and like they come in and there's a cute or whatever, there's a female in general,
Right.
Cute or they don't think she's cute, whatever. That there is that factor.
They have the same struggle too.
Yeah, but when a guy comes in, it doesn't matter. Like there is to a point. If a guy has his shit together and he looks like he's put together, versus someone that is overweight, hair's not done, sloppy. Yeah, sloppy. There's still that same stigma, right? So that is something that is still out there. But what I will say is that I know there are cigar shops. When we were out at Burn that time, and there were some very attractive females. And I got to be honest, it's one of those things where I asked one of the reps, I was like, so who are these girls? And they're like, oh, they're actually the manager and also the head account, like humidor manager of this shop up in Michigan. I was like, well, they got to kill it. Because it is a male-dominated thing. If they know their shit, and people like go through the attrition of the fact that they know their shit and they're not going home with them, and they do this, but they like going to the cigar shop to hang out with attractive. Attractiveness is not necessarily always a bad thing, in my opinion.
Right.
You can play to your strengths. You can have this conversation with these people, and if you play your strengths and you're not trying to take advantage of people, they pick up on that. You're still a good person.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. Spencer, you're quiet.
I don't disagree with you, Steve. I mean, attractiveness is just, obvious things. Steve, obviously you're a good-looking guy, so people, are naturally gravitated to you. I just don't, we in my field, we just hired a woman to work with us a couple years ago. And there's a lot of positives, but there's also, a learning curve just to dealing with it. And again, it's just all this stuff is new in the workforce over the past, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years that it's not new anymore. It's a thing. But I think in your industry, which is more, I don't want to say entertainment industry, but, the restaurant and bar industry, it's just different. And, certain things sell, but I think professionalism and especially becoming an expert, if you're an expert on pipe tobacco, we've talked about that before. If you're an expert, you're an expert. And it's just the prejudice that might be seen or unseen. It's just more of an uphill battle. I just think that it's important for us to just respect that it's an uphill battle, and it's never going to be perfect, but hopefully we're making, a little bit of progress.
Yeah, we've had some really great recognition just with people that know their stuff in the restaurant and bar industry. There's several magazines that are devoted to doing that. Podcasts like this are very helpful. And I think people see it and, it's out there, and that's, helping a ton.
Let me ask this question, right? So if you walk into McClellan's pub, what do you expect to see? What should someone expect to see?
You get a lot of Burberry or blueberry.
I like Burberry
vodka.
stuff. Yeah,
you get the whipped vodka. You got the marshmallow vodka and Rumpelmitz.
Oh, that's
only if you know Amy.
that's That's Tuesday.
Romance Tuesday, catchy.
Hey, Raina.
Hey-o.
No, if you come in, you should expect to see a great selection. Hopefully with beer along with the bourbon, whiskey, and scotch. You should expect good service. You should expect great food. The feel should be homey, comfortable, pubby. I want the feel to be like a living room. I want everything to be friendly. You should see all of those things when you come in.
All right, so here's my follow-up question. How do you get past this? How do we get past this it's anybody's game? Because you're absolutely killing it. We didn't talk about the actual like subject title as much because we changed it, but we absolutely talked more about the elephant in the room where it's a woman in a man's world. How do you get past that? Like, where do we go from here? That I think this is something that, you know, we can talk about where we're at right now. You know, Spencer, you made some absolutely fantastic points. And Amy, you have actually explained more than I actually realized that I would get out of this podcast. But where do we go from here? Is it a time thing? Is it something that where you get to this point where, you know, it's been 7 years almost, 6.5, 7 years. So do we have to wait till year 10, 13, 14? Where do we get to the point where you don't feel like there is a stereotype there? Or do you think
it's big of a gap?
Well, it's a gap, but I got to be honest, man. I'm still at that point where it's like I would absolutely give you the advice, which is based off of just my honest opinion. Play to your fucking strengths. You know, it's like you are a female pub owner. You know your shit. You know what I mean? You've laid out all of these things where it's like, yeah, I'm 4'11". I'm a blonde now. I've done all this stuff, and it's like, just get after it. You're already doing that, and it's like, where does it come from? Someone walks in your bar that the people around them, when they confront you, it's like, oh, can I talk to the guy in charge or whatever? And like, yeah, I'm the guy in charge. And they're like, oh.
Let me talk to your manager, and she turns around and says, I'm the manager.
Hey, you do a 360. You're like, let me get him real quick. You spin around. How can I help you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, where do we go from here?
I mean, humor.
Where do we go from here? Yeah, just sarcastic as shit,
we have
right?
a long way to go. I mean, if you really think about, you know, history in general, women weren't allowed in bars at all until speakeasies.
Yeah.
And then after that, they weren't allowed to work in bars unless you were a wife or a daughter until almost 1960. Which
really?
is there were actual laws, and Michigan was a huge one. Michigan was one of the last ones to switch over to drop that law.
Fuck Michigan. Sorry. I got a cough.
You need to get that looked at.
So
I got a great doctor.
That's really not that. That's not really that long ago. So we are making huge strides here. Things are happening, but you don't want to overshadow it either. I mean, there are some great male owners, chefs, bartenders. You know, so you don't want to just favor one over the other.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go overboard with it because then it's overkill and that's, you know, super annoying. But I think just addressing everyone is just be good at your job and just be fair and know your product and you know, be the best you can be with whatever that is, and people will hopefully, you know, see it as that.
What I like about what you've said tonight and before the podcast and talking with you before this, it's the staff, right? And I worked before the Tinderbox. I worked for a woman-owned business, and it was still a male-dominated industry. It was moving and storage, right? And we got some recognition. We were able to be a part of some of those things where there's programs and there's, you know, spotlights on women-owned businesses, which is a smart business tactic, if you will, as well, right? You know, so that was a husband and wife owner at that point. But when it came down to it, it's about the staff. It's like eliminate all that stuff. Give you the spotlight, but when it comes down to it, it's not just Amy and McClellan's Pub.
No.
But Amy and McClellan's Pub is a reason for me. And I'm not trying to, like, you know, blow smoke up your skirt, and I don't care if you're a guy or a girl.
Thank you.
What I'm saying is that it's something that sets you apart.
Right.
And again, play to your strengths is you know more than a lot of women or men in a lot of this industry, that you have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. And I would say, as someone that is a male, that I think that you get over the ego, you get over everything else. It's like if you go in somewhere, if you're going to pick a place to have a drink, you want to have someone that knows their stuff.
Absolutely.
And it can be a cocktail, it can be beers, it can be whatever your passion is, and when it comes to going out to have a good time. But when you come in there, it's drop the ego.
Right.
You know, and if there's someone like Amy across the bar, I don't care if you're the server, the bartender, or the owner. If I can have a conversation with you about,
or the janitor, that's me too.
Well, that's yeah. I'm the manager of the tinderbox, and I clean the toilet,
right?
Just as much as the owner, and then we're the only two that do it. You know what I mean? It's like that's how it works. But I mean, I think it's something that people take for granted, and they don't realize what they are walking into. This is actually more of a upper echelon type of experience that you're walking into.
The staff loves what they do. They will send me links to new bourbons that are coming out constantly before I've even heard of them. I mean, everybody there is really into what they do.
Yeah.
And they're really proud of it.
It's good hiring.
They're fantastic people. And that makes everything much easier too, that they are supportive, they're knowledgeable, they go out, with themselves to find out this information about new products.
Yeah. All right, so we're at that point now. Spencer, go ahead with the closing remarks.
Well, again, Steve, I will thank you for the surprise of having Amy on the podcast. It was a really pleasant. He gave me a few dates that could be available for me, and I gave him what date I was available, and he was like, "Hey, we got Amy on the podcast." So I was truly grateful that someone that I know and the establishment that I've been to. So I was grateful for that. So thank you.
You introduced us, so that's great.
I do think that. I do think that we have a fair way to go, but I think that we're on our way. But the thing that I like about Amy is that you guys
are very sweet.
It's only been a few years since I've known her, but people are starting to know the name Amy at McClellan's. People know that name. I think it's important that you know that you've built a reputation for yourself, even in the past few years. That people know who you are and what you do. And it has nothing to do with appearances. It has everything to do with your expertise. So, I think that's really important, that the thing that while your pub is growing, while you guys are packed at 7 a.m. in the morning, for Liverpool matches and Premier League games and things like that, has nothing to do with anything else except your expertise and the actual establishment. But, I think just as us as guys, we got a long way to go, but I just think that it's if you treat people equally, and if Amy's an expert, that's all I need. But if she's not, then we'd give her the same shit that we'd give any other person.
I was gonna say, if you're a female and you don't know shit about shit, like
then you don't know shit.
It's the same thing. You don't know shit about shit.
Right.
Then you're going down. But I always enjoy being on this, and congrats, Steve, on 2 years. And
thank you guys.
The second cigar, this Monte Cristo, which was filled with 17 labels on it.
They dressed that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why it cost.
You have to undress that like a turkey dinner.
Yeah, but it was a beautiful cigar. But I really, really suggest people going not just to pub the bar or the establishment, but to try this Weller barrel pick. Because I do think it's going to go fast, and it's not going to be in Ohio very long.
It's going to go fast tonight.
It's going to go fast tonight.
We don't have that long.
I had to switch off of it because you're right. The 114 actually sneaked up. That's not normal. I don't think that's 114.
It's 117.
I don't know. We trailed for a minute.
No, that's not 114.
But just want to appreciate it, and congrats, Steve, on 2 years. And Amy, looking forward to the event on February 29th.
Yes.
And then, obviously, the week of St. Patrick's Day, which goes from March 1st till November 32nd.
Favorite day of the week, week.
It's a mess.
Exactly. Amy, do you have any?
I want to say before we go to Amy, Bobby Hirschman, he's tuning out. He's been a part of this for the whole time. He's been a huge supporter from Pennsylvania.
Good night,
so
Bobby.
Yeah, so he was shocked on the F-bombs and everything like that. So I told him this is an old school podcast. Like Spencer's been a part of some of the earlier ones, and we talked about this before.
So 114.
Well, no, it's not that. It's that, we have our guest, Amy, and we talked about cursing before this, and she was like, I'm kind of nervous. I think I might curse because I do that. And I was like, well, I'll probably curse before you. Fuck that. And then she went full into it. So now we went old school.
Sorry.
So, Amy, what are your closing remarks on the It's Anybody's Game? This is part 2, Beyond the BS.
I think my closing remarks are, just that I appreciate that we've addressed it here, because that's helping to get to where we need to be, and just being open to all these thoughts and the progress that needs to happen. And it's not something that a lot of people take all the time in stride, because it is, kind of a sexist thing sometimes. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to address it on your podcast. Thank you for, this monumental day, bringing me on for that and repping the pub and saying such nice things. I really appreciate that.
It's amazing. You want to say something, Sean? Sean, so our studio audience, hang on one second here. I got to produce here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So just letting you know, Terry Kate's my wife. I think everyone knows that already.
My wife
we already
went over there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But anyway,
Better question, bro.
if you need security, she's got your back. That girl will fight tooth and nail for.
Well, there you go.
For the girls, I mean, for the ladies, she is all about it. So
that's great.
You need a bouncer.
Female owned,
Perfect.
female bounced.
Yeah.
That is a unique
that's
situation. I love that. All right, so what I'll say. All right, so thank you again for our sponsors. Right, so Tinderbox of Easton for the first cigar, the Romeo y Julieta, the Connecticut Nicaragua. I'm still smoking it. Actually, I must have talked too much or whatever, but I really enjoy this. Altadis USA for the support for the Monte Cristo Espada. Spencer already touched on that. I think that's a great cigar. I think those guys are doing amazing things. BS Cigar Company as well, Patreon page. Thank you guys. Patreon.com/Bourbon and BS Podcast. You can donate or contribute $1, $5, $10, $25 million, whatever you guys want to do. But that helps us buy more bottles of whiskey, do the buys for the merchandise, and there will be some thank you gifts for those guys. This whole topic, as far as part two, here's my thing: is that
You're conflicted.
Well, I'm not conflicted to a point, right? So I look at someone like Amy, and I walk into her bar, and I have utmost respect, and also I'm at awe, because I am still a victim of the social connotation of a female that knows about whiskey, that runs a pub. This is a fact. This is something that is a fact of the matter thing. What I don't appreciate is when people shut down because of it. Because I don't care, male, female, if you're white, black, you're whatever in between of all of these things. It's interesting, because when I look at it, as I'm of the opinion that no matter who you are, who you identify with, I don't know what you do, but you're still a person.
Right.
I had conversations in the not so distant past where someone was not really, because I am a middle-aged white male, that they weren't as open to introducing their friends, if they had friends that were female, that were transgender, that were black, were Mexican, were just foreign in any sense. And my response was like, I'm still going to offer them. If they came into my house, I'm still going to offer them a beer. It sounds trivial, it sounds above board, but it's like I don't fucking care, and that's not necessarily what people want to hear. If I walk into a pub that's man owned, that's woman owned, that's white owned, that's whatever, like black, these are the treetop level things. It's like I don't care.
No.
If someone that's transgender, and now there's apparently, and this is where I might lose some people, but there's like 18, 20, however many genders out there, and it's like I don't fucking care.
Right.
If you know your shit, if you're a respectable human being, this is what we're dealing with. And this is what I deal with on an everyday basis. You come over to my house, I don't care. You don't have to give me a disclaimer. It's like you want to give me a shock that it's like, oh, this is this person that is, this is how they identify, this is what they wear, and all that stuff. Is like, cool.
Right.
That's it.
I don't want to be.
Are they
going
to they're going to trash
a female-owned pub. I want to be known for having a great pub.
You're known as having a great pub.
But when it comes down to it, if you are a female-owned pub.
But that's not. I want it to be just a great pub, and
I respect that completely. And that's my whole thing, is that when it comes down to it, is that when you get down to it, is people are people.
Right.
and figure it the fuck out. You know what I mean? That's my whole thing, is that when you guys are dealing with people on an everyday basis, or you walk into someone's business, or you walk in, if you're a salesperson, if you're someone that is trying to buy a car, you're trying to do all that stuff, focus on the moment, focus on the objective at hand, and stop losing yourself on constantly objectifying things in a subjective manner, so that you lose the focus of what you're trying to do. And that's my big thing, is that because when it comes down to it, I think you're going to enjoy the experience that you're dealing with, or you're walking into, more and more when you deal with people as people.
Yeah.
If they have their own agenda and they're projecting on you, respond accordingly. But if they're just being people, then be people as well, because they're going to respond to you if you have an objective as well, or an agenda. So
it's getting there.
It's getting there, and it's not going to be a perfect world. It won't be. So thank you to the sponsors. I want to remind everyone to tune in next week. We have Laurel from Macanudo. This will be available. Share it, the Facebook Live and the Facebook video that will stay available. And then also the iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, Luminary, all these other podcast viewers. I'll share it, all that stuff. But take advantage of the 15% off. And thank you guys that have been a part of this podcast throughout the whole thing. 2 years in, I really appreciate all the support, and I'm excited about year 3. Spencer, thank you for being a part of it since the very beginning. I mean, honestly, you've been a big supporter of it. So, guys, happy Whiskey Wednesday. I want to remind everyone to stay focused.
Focus.
And cheers. Thank you, Amy,
Cheers.
very much.
Thank you very much for having
Spencer,
me.
thank you.